Hey everyone. I have to say, the first thing that hit me, about 28 years later, the Bone Temple wasn't the violence, or even the infected. It was the mood. This film opens with a kind of quiet dread that feels heavier than chaos. You immediately sense that this world isn't just broken physically, it's spiritually rotten. Survival here isn't about outrunning monsters anymore. It's about enduring other humans, their beliefs, their cruelty, and the stories they tell themselves to justify it. From the very beginning, the film makes it clear that danger doesn't always come screaming. Sometimes it whispers, sometimes it smiles, and sometimes it invites you in. We start with Spike, a teenager who has already seen more than anyone his age should. When he's rescued by the Fingers gang, it initially feels like luck, maybe even salvation. But that illusion doesn't last long. The Fingers are led by Sir Lord Jimmy Crystal, a man who radiates charisma and menace in equal measure. He doesn't rule through brute force alone, he rules through identity. Names matter to him. Control matters. Spike is stripped of who he was and renamed Jimmy, just like everyone else in the group. On the surface, it seems almost playful, even absurd. But beneath it lies something deeply disturbing. By erasing individuality, Sir Jimmy turns people into tools, reflections of himself, interchangeable pieces in his twisted kingdom. Spike's initiation into the group is brutal and immediate. He's forced into a fight to the death against Jimmy Shite, a ritual disguised as tradition. There's no honor here, no necessity, only spectacle. Spike survives, but something inside him fractures. This moment isn't just about physical survival. It's about the cost of staying alive in a world where morality has been replaced by performance. As the group cheers, Spike realizes that survival here means becoming something he doesn't recognize. While this darkness unfolds, the film cuts to a very different kind of isolation. Dr. Ian Kelson lives among bones, literally. He has dedicated himself to maintaining the Bone Temple, an ossuary built as a memorial for those lost in the original outbreak. Unlike the Fingers, Kelson clings to memory rather than power. He believes the dead deserve dignity, even when the living have lost theirs. His life is quiet, repetitive, and deeply lonely, but it carries a sense of purpose that feels almost sacred in contrast to the chaos elsewhere. Kelson's most fascinating relationship, though, isn't with the dead. It's with Samson, an alpha infected, who keeps returning to the Bone Temple. At first, Samson seems like a threat waiting to happen, but Kelson notices something strange. Samson allows himself to be sedated repeatedly by Kelson's blowpipe, almost as if he craves the clarity it brings. Under its influence, Samson becomes calmer, more human. He stops attacking. He eats berries instead of raw meat. At one point, he even clothes himself. These moments are unsettling, not because they're violent, but because they challenge everything we think we know about the infected. A fragile bond forms between doctor and monster. Kelson begins to suspect that the rage driving the infected might not be pure biological infection, but something closer to psychosis, a mind trapped in permanent terror. When Samson mutters the word moon, it's like a crack in the world opens. That single word carries memory, language, and awareness. Suddenly, the idea that the virus might be treatable doesn't feel insane. It feels terrifyingly possible. Back with the Fingers, the illusion of order collapses into outright horror during a raid on a survivor farm. Tom and his pregnant partner Kathy are hiding there, trying to preserve a future in a world that no longer wants one. The Fingers slaughter without hesitation. Sir Jimmy orders the captured survivors to be skinned alive as a sacrifice to Satan, a voice he claims to hear, a voice he insists is his son. This isn't madness played for shock, it's fanaticism. Sir Jimmy has built a belief system where cruelty becomes holy, and obedience becomes faith. Spike can't stomach it. He runs from the barn and vomits, his body rejecting what his mind can't fully process yet. Sir Jimmy offers Tom a chance to join the Fingers, not through loyalty, but through blood. Another fight to the death. Tom chooses Jemima, thinking she's the weakest. He's wrong. Violence here doesn't care about assumptions. When Kathy kills Jemima in a desperate attempt to save Tom, chaos erupts. Fire spreads. People burn. Tom dies anyway. There are no victories here, only losses layered on top of each other. Sir Jimmy sends Spike to capture Kathy, but when he finds her, something breaks open inside him. He begs her to take him with her. For a moment, hope flickers. But Kathy understands the world better than Spike does. She knows trust is a liability. She incapacitates him, and escapes alone. It's cruel, but it's honest. And that honesty hurts more than any betrayal. When Spike returns, Sir Jimmy's rage is immediate. The gang's numbers are dwindling, morale is collapsing, and control is slipping. Jimmy Inc., quieter, more thoughtful than the others, suggests something dangerous. She believes Dr. Kelson is Satan himself, based on his appearance and his interactions with Samson. To Sir Jimmy, this is an opportunity. Faith can be weaponized. Fear can be redirected. As they move toward the Bone Temple, the film tightens its grip. Two belief systems are on a collision course. One built on domination and lies, the other on memory and fragile hope. Spike tries to flee but is nearly killed by Jimmy Fox. Ink intervenes, killing Fox to save Spike. It's the first clear sign that allegiance within the Fingers is fracturing. Lies are already forming to cover the truth, but the rot has set in. At the Bone Temple, Kelson prepares for the worst. He gives Samson a cocktail of antipsychotics, hoping to ease the Alpha's suffering. What follows is one of the most haunting sequences in the film. Samson wanders to an abandoned train, the place where he was first infected. Under the drugs, he hallucinates a childhood memory of riding the train. A guard asks for his ticket. Samson says aloud, "I don't have a ticket," and suddenly the infected attack him as if he's human. It's tragic, poetic, and horrifying. For a moment, Samson becomes something in between, not fully monster, not fully man, and the world punishes him for it. The Bone Temple has done something rare. It hasn't just expanded the mythology of the infected. It has reframed the true horror. The monsters aren't just outside anymore. They're inside belief systems, inside leaders, inside the stories people tell to survive. And Spike, caught between them all, hasn't he just lost his innocence? He,s standing at the edge of choosing what kind of human he,s willing to become. The barn smells of smoke, sweat, and rusted metal, a place where violence feels routine rather than shocking. Spike stands in the center, surrounded by faces that show neither kindness nor curiosity, only expectation. Sir Lord Jimmy Crystal watches him closely, his eyes sharp and amused, as if Spike is an object rather than a person. There is no comfort in being rescued here. The group does not welcome him. They test him. Before Spike can ask a single question, he is told that survival requires proof, not obedience. So Jimmy explains that Spike must earn his place. The Fingers, as they call themselves, all carry versions of the same name, a strange ritual that erases individuality and replaces it with loyalty. Spike is pushed forward, and across from him stands Jimmy Scheidt, a young man with a grin that feels rehearsed. There are no rules, no mercy, only the command to fight. Spike's hands shake as he tries to understand what is happening, but the crowd's chanting swallows his voice. Fear takes over. The fight begins. It is not a skilled fight. It is desperate, ugly, and exhausting. Spike stumbles, scrapes his hands, and struggles to stay upright as Jimmy Scheidt moves, with the calm confidence of someone who has done this before. Every strike hurts. Every breath feels heavier than the last. There is no honor here, no meaning, only the instinct to stay alive. When Jimmy Scheidt finally collapses, the barn falls silent for a brief moment before erupting in cheers. Spike stands there, trembling, not feeling victorious, only empty. Sir Jimmy steps forward, clapping slowly. He announces that Spike is no longer Spike. From this moment on, he will be called Jimmy, like the others. The name change is not a reward. It is a form of control, a way of stripping away what little identity Spike has left. The Fingers cheer again, welcoming him as one of their own. Spike barely hears them. He is too busy trying not to vomit, trying not to collapse. One face in the crowd looks different. Jimmy Ink, quieter and more observant, looks at him with something close to sympathy. It is the first sign of human connection Spike has felt in days. Far away from the barn, Dr. Ian Kelson continues his work at the Bone Temple. The structure is not a shelter or a fortress. It is a memorial, built from the bones of those who died in the outbreak. Kelson moves carefully through it, cleaning, repairing, arranging. Every bone represents a life that ended violently and too soon. His work is not about rebuilding the world. It is about refusing to forget it. In a world where survival often requires emotional numbness, Kelson chooses remembrance instead. Kelson's isolation is broken by the return of Samson, the Alpha infected. Samson is massive, scarred, and dangerous. Yet his behavior does not match what Kelson expects. Instead of attacking, Samson lingers near the Bone Temple. Kelson uses a blowpipe to administer a sedative, expecting Samson to flee, but instead, Samson returns again and again. Kelson begins to suspect that Samson is intentionally seeking the drug, drawn to the moments of clarity it provides. Over time, Samson's behavior changes. He stops lunging at Kelson. He eats berries instead of raw meat. At one point, he attempts to put on clothing, fumbling awkwardly. as if trying to remember how. Kelson observes these changes carefully, documenting them, afraid to trust them too quickly. The possibility that the virus might not fully erase humanity begins to take shape in his mind. It is a dangerous hope, but it is also the first real hope he has felt since the world collapsed. Kelson wrestles with the ethical weight of his situation. Samson is still dangerous. One mistake could be fatal. There are moments when Kelson considers euthanizing him, ending both the threat and what he assumes is Samson's suffering. The decision hangs over him constantly. Then, one day, Samson speaks. It is not a sentence, not even a clear thought. It is a single word. Moon. The sound of it freezes Kelson in place. Language suggests memory. Memory suggests identity. The virus may not have destroyed everything after all. That word changes everything. Kelson shifts from cautious observation to active experimentation. If Samson can recall words, perhaps he can recall more. Perhaps the aggression of the infected is not simply biological, but psychological, layered over something still human beneath. Kelson's work at the Bone Temple gains new purpose. It is no longer only about honoring the dead. It becomes about fighting for the living, even when they no longer look alive. Back with the fingers, Sir Jimmy sets his sights on a farm nearby. It is quiet, isolated, inhabited by a small group of survivors who have managed to build a fragile sense of normal life. Among them are Tom and Kathy, a couple whose greatest act of hope is Kathy's pregnancy. Their home is modest, their defense is minimal, their safety built more on belief than reality. When the fingers arrive, that belief collapses instantly. Kathy escapes in the chaos, running into the fields while the others are captured. Tom hides with her in the barn loft, both of them shaking as they listen to the voices below. Sir Jimmy announces the group's fate with theatrical intensity. He claims to hear the voice of Satan, whom he believes is his son, demanding sacrifice. The captured survivors are to be skinned alive. The absurdity of the belief does nothing to soften its cruelty. It only makes it more terrifying. Spike watches this unfold, his stomach twisting. He tries to look away, but there is nowhere to hide from what he has become a part of. When the first survivor is dragged forward, Spike turns and vomits. The sound cuts sharply through the barn. Sir Jimmy notices. Instead of punishing Spike immediately, he turns his attention to Tom. Sir Jimmy offers Tom a choice that is no choice at all. Fight to the death, and you may earn a place among the fingers. Refuse, and die anyway. Tom accepts, knowing Kathy needs time more than he does. He scans the group and chooses Jemima, believing her to be the weakest. It is a mistake born of desperation. The fight is swift and merciless. Jemima is precise and ruthless. Tom's resistance collapses under her attack. As Jemima prepares to deliver the final blow, Kathy acts. She swings down from the loft with a hook, striking Jemima with everything she has. The impact is fatal. Jemima collapses, and the barn falls silent again. Chaos follows. Tom sets the barn on fire, flames spreading quickly through the structure. One of the fingers dies in the blaze. Others are burned. Smoke fills the air. In the confusion, Tom is killed, but his final act gives Kathy a chance to escape. She runs without looking back, the fire lighting her path into the darkness. Sir Jimmy watches her go, then turns to Spike. His order is simple: bring her back. The command carries threat and expectation. Spike runs after Kathy, torn between fear of Sir Jimmy and a growing need to escape this life. Spike eventually catches up to Kathy. They stand facing each other, both exhausted. Kathy's eyes are sharp with distrust. Spike does not threaten her. He begs her to take him with her. He tells her he does not want to go back. He tells her he cannot stay. For a moment, Kathy seems to soften. She steps closer, nodding, as if agreeing. Spike relaxes, his guard dropping. Then she strikes, using surprise to incapacitate him. She runs again, choosing survival over compassion. Spike lies on the ground, staring at the sky, realizing his escape has failed. When he returns to the camp empty-handed, Sir Jimmy's fury is immediate. He lashes out at Spike, making it clear that failure will not be tolerated. The group watches in silence. One person does not remain silent. Jimmy Inc. steps forward. She challenges Sir Jimmy, not directly, but through suggestion. She claims that Satan is the real enemy. She says Dr. Kelson, with his orange-dyed skin and strange connection to the Alpha-infected, must be Satan himself. Her words feed Sir Jimmy's delusions. The idea takes hold quickly. His rage redirects itself. Sir Jimmy decides they will go to the Bone Temple. He will confront Kelson and force him to play the role of Satan to restore his control over the fingers. The decision feels sudden, but it is the result of everything falling apart around him. He needs spectacle. He needs fear. He needs a myth to rebuild his authority. Spike watches the group prepare to leave, his body aching, his mind exhausted. He realizes he is being carried deeper into something far more dangerous than he understands. The Bone Temple, the Alpha, the Doctor, and Sir Jimmy's rituals are about to collide. The only thing keeping Spike grounded is his connection to Jimmy Inc., the one person who still seems to remember what it means to be human. Meanwhile, Coulson continues his work, unaware of what is coming. Samson returns again, drawn to the sedative, to the structure, to something neither of them can fully explain. Coulson observes that Samson's posture is calmer, his movements slower. He notices the way Samson looks at the Bone Temple, not with hunger, but with recognition. The possibility that this place, built from death, could become a place of healing feels almost impossible. Yet impossible things have already happened. The group moves through the landscape with the confidence of people who believe fear belongs only to others. Sir Jimmy walks at the front, his posture upright, his eyes fixed forward, already imagining the confrontation that will prove his power. Spike walks behind him, every step heavy, his thoughts tangled in regret and dread. Jimmy Inc. stays close to him, offering silent reassurance through proximity rather than words. The Bone Temple waits ahead, a structure made from the remains of the dead, a monument built not for worship but for memory. None of the fingers understand this. To them, it is a stage. Coulson senses movement long before he sees them. He hears the distant noise of boots, voices, and metal. His instincts tell him to hide, but his conscience refuses. He does not believe in running from the living, no matter how broken they are. He stands near the entrance of the Bone Temple, his stained coat hanging loosely, his hands steady despite the danger. Samson lingers nearby, partially concealed, watching with quiet curiosity rather than aggression. Sir Jimmy approaches first. He steps into the shadow of the structure and looks around with theatrical disgust and fascination. He calls out, demanding to know if Satan is present. Coulson answers calmly, asking what they want. Sir Jimmy's response is a speech, full of certainty, accusation, and delusion. He claims that Coulson has corrupted his people, that he has interfered with divine order, that he must now serve a higher purpose. Coulson listens without interrupting, studying Sir Jimmy's posture, tone, and eyes. He recognizes a mind that has replaced reality with belief. Sir Jimmy moves closer, lowering his voice. He threatens Coulson's life, stating clearly that he will be killed unless he agrees to impersonate Satan. The purpose is control. The fingers must believe their leader speaks with divine authority, and Coulson's appearance, his environment, and his connection to Samson make him the perfect symbol. Coulson understands immediately that refusal means death. Compliance means becoming a weapon. Spike watches the exchange from a distance, his stomach tightening. He realizes that Coulson is being dragged into the same cycle of violence that trapped him. Jimmy Inc. watches with a different expression. She looks conflicted, torn between loyalty to the group and recognition of its collapse. Sir Jimmy turns to the fingers and announces that Satan has been found. The group reacts with awe and fear, their faith shifting instantly. Coulson agrees to the role, not out of belief, but out of calculation. He understands that this situation cannot be controlled through force. It can only be redirected. He asks for time to prepare, to create a performance worthy of Satan. Sir Jimmy, satisfied, grants him the night. The fingers retreat, setting up camp nearby, buzzing with anticipation. As darkness falls, Spike attempts to leave. He moves quietly, avoiding the firelight, slipping past sleeping bodies. His body still aches from his earlier injuries, but the pain no longer matters. Survival matters. He nearly makes it to the edge of camp before Jimmy Fox notices him. Jimmy Fox confronts him with rage, blaming him for Jimmy Scheidt's death. He attacks Spike without hesitation, his strikes fueled by grief and resentment. Spike struggles to defend himself, his movements clumsy, his strength fading. The fight draws attention. Jimmy Inc. arrives and intervenes. She does not hesitate. She kills Jimmy Fox to protect Spike. The act is swift and final. When others approach, she lies without blinking. She claims Jimmy Fox was trying to flee in fear of Satan. The group accepts the explanation easily. Fear has become their default state. Spike stares at her, shocked and grateful. He realizes that she has crossed a line she cannot uncross. She has chosen him over the group, even if she cannot admit it aloud. Their bond deepens, built not on trust, but on shared guilt. At the Bone Temple, Coulson prepares for the performance. He does not know exactly what Sir Jimmy expects, but he knows fear must be theatrical. He gathers pyrotechnics, hallucinogenic substances, and sound equipment. He creates an environment that will overwhelm the senses, blur reality, and dismantle certainty. His goal is not to strengthen Sir Jimmy's control, but to destroy it. Before the performance, Kelson makes a decision regarding Samson. He believes that the infected's hyperaggression may be caused by psychosis layered over neurological damage. If this is true, then sedation alone is not treatment. It is suppression. He administers a cocktail of antipsychotic medication to Samson, hoping to stabilize his mind rather than numb it. Samson reacts differently than before. Instead of slowing down, he becomes restless. He leaves the Bone Temple, drawn toward a nearby abandoned train. Kelson follows at a distance, concerned but curious. Samson enters the train, moving through its darkened corridors as if guided by memory rather than instinct. Inside the train, Samson begins to hallucinate. His body language shifts. His posture softens. He touches the walls, the seats, the windows, not as obstacles but as familiar objects. In his mind, he is no longer infected. He is a child again, riding the train with family, surrounded by voices, warmth, and movement. A train guard appears in his hallucination and asks for his ticket. Samson answers aloud that he does not have one. The sound of his own voice triggers something. The infected hiding in the train car hear him and attack. Samson fights them off, but the moment of clarity is gone. The past dissolves back into violence. Kelson witnesses this from outside, his heart breaking and racing at the same time. The hallucination confirms what he suspected. Samson still has a mind. It is damaged, distorted, fragmented, but not erased. The virus has not destroyed humanity. It has buried it. Night deepens. Sir Jimmy leads the fingers to the Bone Temple. The atmosphere is heavy with anticipation. Kelson activates the pyrotechnics, filling the air with fire, smoke, and sound. He plays loud music, flooding the space with overwhelming noise. The hallucinogens begin to take effect, distorting perception, amplifying fear, and blurring boundaries between reality and imagination. Kelson emerges as Satan, cloaked in fire and shadow, his voice distorted by sound equipment. He speaks with authority, using language designed to destabilize Sir Jimmy's power rather than reinforce it. He tells the fingers that their leader has lied, that he has corrupted their faith, that he must be punished. The crowd reacts with confusion, fear, and anger. Sir Jimmy is stunned. His authority fractures in real time. Kelson spots Spike among the group. Recognition flashes across his face. He realizes Spike is trapped, not a believer, not a follower, but a victim. He changes course. Instead of focusing on Sir Jimmy's downfall alone, he appeals to the group's humanity. He urges them to save Spike, to reject violence, to choose something different. Sir Jimmy reacts violently. He lunges at Kelson, stabbing him. The illusion shatters instantly. Blood replaces fire. Sound replaces spectacle. The fingers freeze, unsure what to believe anymore. Spike moves without thinking. He stabs Sir Jimmy. Jimmy Inc. moves at the same time, killing the remaining loyalists who attempt to defend him. The Bone Temple becomes a battlefield, not of armies, but of fractured minds colliding in chaos. Kelson collapses, his body failing. Spike kneels beside him, holding his hand, his face filled with grief and guilt. Kelson tells him that none of this is his fault, that survival is not sin, that choosing life is not weakness. His words are not long, but they are enough. He dies not as Satan, but as a doctor. Jimmy Inc. impales Sir Jimmy on an inverted cross, ending him publicly, symbolically, and permanently. Sir Jimmy's delusions collapse into silence. His power dissolves with his body. Spike and Jimmy Inc. leave together. As they walk away from the Bone Temple, Jimmy Inc. tells Spike her real name. It is Kelly. The name is not dramatic. It is simple. It is human. Spike repeats it quietly, as if afraid to lose it. Samson arrives at the Bone Temple after the violence has ended. He approaches Kelson's body, his movements slow and deliberate. He kneels beside him, touching his face gently. He says Kelson's name. The sound is quiet, broken, but unmistakable. Samson lifts Kelson's body and carries it away, not as prey, but as someone carrying a loved one. Sir Jimmy's body remains behind, nailed to the cross. He cries out for his mother before the infected reach him. His final moments are not theatrical. They are small, desperate, and human. Spike and Kelly walk through the wilderness, their bodies exhausted, their minds fractured, but their direction clear. They are no longer running from something. They are running towards something, even if they do not know what it is yet. Spike and Kelly move through the remains of a collapsed suburb, walking side by side but never fully relaxing. Their bodies still carry the tension of the Bone Temple. Their their minds still hearing echoes of screaming, gunfire, and broken belief. Neither of them speaks much. Words feel unnecessary, even dangerous. Silence feels safer than explanation. They enter an abandoned house to rest. The structure is half burned, its walls stained with smoke, its windows shattered. Spike checks each room carefully, clearing corners, listening for movement. Kelly watches the street through a broken window, her posture alert, her eyes scanning for threats. They have both learned that safety is temporary and must be earned every minute. Inside the house, Spike notices small, human details that feel out of place in the dead world. A child's drawing remains taped to a refrigerator door. A pair of shoes sits neatly by the entrance. A calendar still hangs on the wall, frozen on a date from years ago. The presence of these objects makes him uneasy. They suggest a life interrupted, not ended. He avoids touching them. They find a bedroom with a door that still locks. Spike reinforces it with a dresser. Kelly sets traps near the stairwell and windows using glass shards, wire, and noise-making objects. They settle into opposite corners of the room, both too alert to sleep deeply. Kelly breaks the silence first. She tells Spike about her life before the collapse. She grew up in a town that felt invisible even before the world ended. Her father worked construction. Her mother ran a small daycare from their home. Kelly was good at school, but she felt restless, always watching the horizon, waiting for something to happen. When the outbreak began, she was working at a gym. The evacuation order never reached her street. By the time she realized what was happening, the roads were already blocked. Spike listens without interrupting. He does not ask questions. He does not offer commentary. He understands that what she needs is not response, but presence. Kelly continues. She describes how she met Sir Jimmy. He was not a leader at first. He was just loud, confident, charismatic. He offered structure when everything else had collapsed. People followed him because he spoke with certainty, not because he was right. Kelly followed him because she was afraid to be alone. Over time, his certainty hardened into cruelty. He demanded obedience. He punished doubt. He turned grief into doctrine. Kelly tells Spike that she knew he was wrong long before she knew how to leave. Spike tells her about his own life before everything fell apart. He was never stable. He moved from place to place, job to job, relationship to relationship. He avoided responsibility, avoided permanence, avoided anything that required long-term investment. When the outbreak started, he was already running from something. The collapse only gave him permission to keep running. He admits that he does not know who he is without motion. Stopping feels like death. They sit in silence after that. The house creaks in the wind. Somewhere in the distance, something moves. They do not investigate. They have learned that not everything needs to be confronted. In the morning, they leave the house and continue traveling north. The land becomes more rural, more open. Fields stretch into the distance, empty and quiet. Abandoned barns stand like skeletons against the horizon. The silence is heavy, not peaceful. It carries the weight of absence. They encounter a collapsed bridge over a river. The water below is slow-moving, dark, and filled with debris. Crossing directly is impossible. They follow the riverbank until they find a narrow section where fallen trees create a rough crossing. Spike tests the stability of each log before stepping. Kelly moves behind him, steady and cautious. Halfway across, Spike hears movement in the water. He freezes. Something large moves beneath the surface. The water ripples. A shape breaks the surface briefly, before disappearing again. Kelly notices Spike's reaction, and stops. They wait in silence, unmoving, listening. The water eventually settles. They continue crossing, slower now, more alert. On the other side, they find a farmhouse that appears intact. The roof is damaged, but the walls remain standing. The front door hangs open, swaying in the breeze. Spike approaches carefully, checking for signs of recent activity. There are footprints in the dirt near the entrance. Fresh, not infected, human. Inside the house, they find a woman in her 30s, sitting at a kitchen table. She holds a rifle loosely in her hands. Her posture is defensive, but exhausted. A young boy, maybe 8 years old, sits beside her, his legs dangling from the chair, his eyes wide and alert. The woman raises the rifle slightly when she sees them. Spike raises his hands. Kelly steps forward slowly, palms open. They introduce themselves. The woman's name is Nora. The boy's name is Eli. They have been alone for months. Nora explains that they were part of a larger group that fell apart after a series of attacks. Most of the group fled. Some were killed. Nora stayed behind because Eli was injured and could not travel. He has since recovered, but she no longer trusts groups. She trusts walls, weapons, and silence. Spike understands immediately. He sees himself in her isolation, her fear, her exhaustion. He does not attempt to convince her of anything. He simply says that they are passing through and do not intend to stay. Nora studies him carefully, then looks at Kelly. Something in Kelly's posture, her calm, her steadiness, seems to ease Nora slightly. They trade supplies. Spike offers medical supplies, batteries, and food. Nora offers fresh water, preserved vegetables, and ammunition. The exchange is quiet, respectful, and cautious. Eli watches Spike closely. At one point, he asks Spike if monsters are real. Spike hesitates before answering. He tells Eli that monsters exist, but not in the way people think. Eli asks what that means. Spike says that monsters are what people become when they forget each other. Eli thinks about this, then nods, as if he understands something important. As they prepare to leave, Nora hesitates. She asks Spike and Kelly where they are going. Spike answers honestly. He does not know. He only knows where he is not going. Nora considers this. She tells them that there is a community forming further north, near a river junction, a place with walls, rules, and structure. She does not know if it will last, but she knows it exists. Spike thanks her. Kelly memorizes the directions. They leave the farmhouse and continue north. The land becomes colder. The wind sharpens. The sky darkens earlier each day. They move through forests now, dense and quiet. The trees block sound, making it difficult to detect movement. Spike remains on edge, his hand never far from his weapon. Kelly watches the ground, scanning for tracks, traps, or signs of pursuit. One night they hear singing. It is faint at first, carried by the wind, barely audible. A voice, human, soft, rhythmic. Spike and Kelly freeze. Singing is dangerous. It attracts attention. It implies either safety or insanity. They follow the sound cautiously, staying in the shadows, moving slowly. They find a small clearing illuminated by a fire. A woman sits on a fallen log, singing softly to herself. Her voice is steady, calm, and unafraid. She does not appear infected. She does not appear armed. She appears alone. Spike and Kelly exchange a glance. This situation feels wrong. No one sings alone in the open. Kelly circles wide, approaching from the side. Spike approaches from the front, his weapon lowered but ready. The woman notices them only when they are close. She does not react with fear. She simply stops singing and looks at them. Her eyes are clear, her posture relaxed. She introduces herself as Rose. She says she sings to keep the silence from becoming too loud. Spike asks her where her group is. She says she does not have one. She says she travels alone. She says she trusts her voice more than her weapon. Spike finds this statement deeply unsettling. Kelly finds it intriguing. Rose offers them food and warmth. She has a small camp set up. Organized, clean, efficient. She has supplies, medical gear, and a functioning radio. Spike notices this immediately. A radio means access to information. It also means exposure. Rose tells them she has been monitoring radio frequencies for months. She has heard fragmented broadcasts from different regions. Some communities have formed. Some have fallen. Some have turned into something worse than the infected. She shares a broadcast she recorded days earlier. The voice is distorted but clear enough to understand. It speaks of a new doctrine, a movement forming around control, purification, and absolute obedience. The language is familiar. It mirrors Sir Jimmy's rhetoric, but on a larger scale. Spike feels a cold weight settle in his chest. He realizes that Sir Jimmy was not an anomaly. He was a symptom. Rose says she is heading toward the Northern River Junction. She believes the broadcast originated from that area. She believes something dangerous is forming there. She says she intends to observe it, not join it. She asks Spike and Kelly what they intend to do. Spike does not answer immediately. He looks at Kelly. Kelly looks back. Neither of them wants to run forever. Neither of them wants to be trapped again. They want something different, something uncertain but chosen. Kelly says they will go north. Not because they believe in safety, but because they believe in movement with purpose. Spike nods. Rose smiles faintly. She extinguishes the fire. They travel together under the cover of darkness, moving quietly, sharing watch duties, maintaining distance but not isolation. As they walk, Spike realizes something has shifted. For the first time since the collapse, he is not running from something. He is moving towards something unknown, but intentional. He does not know what they will find at the river junction. He does not know if it will be salvation or destruction. But he knows he will not face it alone. Behind them, far in the distance, something watches. It does not move. It does not attack. It observes. The world is not finished with them yet. The forest thickens as they move north. Trees crowd closer, their branches forming a canopy that blocks most light. The air feels colder, heavier, as though the land itself is holding its breath. Spike, Kelly, and Rose travel in a staggered formation, keeping space between them, scanning different directions. Trust is present, but it is careful, deliberate, and unspoken. They come across a series of old road signs, rusted and bent, barely legible. Rose pauses, brushing moss from one. The letters confirm they are nearing the river junction Nora described. This knowledge does not bring relief. It brings anticipation, and with it, tension. As they move deeper into the forest, they begin noticing signs of human presence. Footprints in the mud, broken branches, old fire pits, carefully concealed but unmistakable. These are not random survivors passing through. These are patrol routes, controlled territory. Kelly kneels beside a set of tracks, examining their depth and spacing. She concludes that several people passed through recently, walking in formation, not scattered. Spike recognizes the pattern. He has seen it before. It is the shape of order, imposed on chaos, not emerging naturally, but forced. Rose grows quieter as they approach the junction. She keeps her radio wrapped in cloth to avoid static noise. She no longer sings. The forest itself feels like it is listening. They reach a ridge overlooking a wide valley, where a river curves through the land like a scar. Below them, nestled near the riverbank, stands a settlement. It is larger than anything they have seen since the collapse. Wooden walls surround the perimeter, reinforced with metal scraps, barbed wire, and watchtowers. Smoke rises from multiple locations, indicating cooking fires, forges, and possibly generators. Spike studies the settlement carefully. He counts at least 4 watchtowers, each manned by armed guards. The walls are not symbolic, they are defensive. Designed to keep things out, but also to keep things in. Kelly notices movement inside the walls. People walk in straight lines, following designated paths. There is order, but it is rigid. No one lingers. No one wanders. Every movement appears purposeful, monitored, controlled. Rose whispers that this matches the broadcast language, structure, doctrine, obedience. They observe from the ridge for hours, watching shifts change, patrols rotate, gates open and close at fixed intervals. Spike notes the discipline. It resembles military organization, but without insignia, without clear ranks visible from this distance. Authority exists, but it is not openly displayed. It is embedded. They decide to approach under the cover of late afternoon, when visibility decreases and patrols adjust. Spike and Kelly move first, staying low, using terrain for cover. Rose follows at a distance, maintaining line of sight but avoiding clustering. As they near the outer perimeter, they encounter a group of scouts. 3 individuals emerge from behind cover, weapons raised, movements synchronized. Spike immediately raises his hands. Kelly mirrors him. Rose remains behind, partially concealed. The scouts do not speak at first. They observe. Their eyes are sharp, calculating. One of them finally asks where they are from. Spike answers honestly. He says they are travelers, seeking shelter and information. He does not mention the broadcast. He does not mention Sir Jimmy. He does not mention doctrine. The scouts exchange glances, then lowered their weapons slightly. They instruct Spike and Kelly to follow them. Rose steps forward from concealment. The scouts tense, but Spike vouches for her. After a moment, they allow her to join. They are escorted through the outer gate. Inside, the settlement feels different from what Spike expected. It is not chaotic. It is not desperate. It is clean, organized, structured. Buildings are arranged in rows. Paths are clearly defined. People work in assigned areas, farming, cooking, repairing, constructing. No one appears idle. Spike notices something unsettling. No one appears to make eye contact. Conversations are minimal. Smiles are rare. Laughter is absent. The settlement functions efficiently, but without warmth. They are taken to a central building constructed from reinforced concrete and metal. Inside, they are led to a room where a man waits. He is middle-aged, well-groomed, wearing clean, fitted clothing. His posture is calm, his voice measured. He introduces himself as Elias. Elias welcomes them to the settlement. He explains that this community was built on principles of order, discipline, and collective survival. He states that chaos is the enemy. Emotion is unreliable. Structure is necessary. Spike listens carefully. Elias's language is controlled, deliberate, and persuasive. He does not speak in absolutes, but in inevitabilities. He does not demand obedience. He presents it as logic. Elias asks them about their journey. Spike shares a version of the truth, omitting certain details. He speaks of moving through dangerous territories, of losing people, of searching for stability. Elias nods, as though he expected this answer. Kelly remains silent, observing. Rose asks about the broadcast. Elias does not deny its existence. He acknowledges that communication is essential for unifying survivors. He says fragmented groups are weak. Unified groups are strong. He says survival is not enough. Humanity must be preserved through control, not chaos. Spike recognizes the pattern immediately. This is not survival. This is ideology. Elias offers them a place in the settlement. He explains the expectations. They will be assigned roles based on their skills. They will follow schedules. They will adhere to community guidelines. In return, they will receive food, shelter, medical care, and protection. Kelly asks, what happens to those who refuse? Elias answers calmly that those who refuse are free to leave, but that leaving without preparation often leads to death. He does not threaten. He states probability. Rose asks about leadership. Elias explains that the settlement is governed by a council. Decisions are made collectively, but guided by a shared doctrine. He does not elaborate on the doctrine. He speaks of it as though it is self-evident. Spike senses that something is missing. There is no mention of dissent, no mention of disagreement, no mention of failure. This absence feels intentional. They are given temporary accommodations and told they will be evaluated over the next day. As they are escorted to their quarters, Spike notices that the doors lock from the outside. Inside the room, they sit in silence for a long moment. Kelly is the first to speak. She says this place feels like Sir Jimmy's camp, scaled up and sanitized. Spike agrees. He says the difference is presentation. Sir Jimmy used fear and spectacle. Elias uses logic and order. Both demand obedience. Both eliminate individuality. Rose says she does not trust communities that remove emotion from survival. She says emotion is not weakness. It is information. That night, Spike cannot sleep. He listens to the sounds of the settlement. The footsteps are steady. The gates open and close on schedule. There is no chaos, but there is also no unpredictability. Everything is controlled. He remembers something Kelson said about the nature of evil. Not chaos, but certainty. Not violence, but conviction. The next morning, they are escorted to an evaluation area. Each of them is questioned separately. Spike is asked about his skills, his past, his willingness to follow rules. He answers honestly, but cautiously. He emphasizes adaptability. He does not promise obedience. Kelly is questioned next. She challenges the structure openly. She asks how dissent is handled. She asks how mistakes are forgiven. She asks how humanity is preserved without freedom. The evaluators remain calm, but provide vague answers. Rose is questioned last. She asks about art, music, storytelling. The evaluators appear confused by these questions. They respond that such activities are not prioritized. After the evaluations, Elias meets with them again. He informs them that Spike and Kelly are suitable candidates for integration. Rose, however, is not. He says her perspective is incompatible with the settlement's goals. He offers her safe passage to leave. Spike immediately objects. He says they travel together. Elias responds that unity is valuable, but not at the expense of stability. He says Rose's influence could disrupt the settlement. Kelly says that excluding Rose proves their fears. Elias responds that not everyone belongs everywhere. He says this is not cruelty. It is efficiency. Rose remains calm. She tells Spike and Kelly that they should consider staying. She says safety matters. She says survival requires compromise. Spike tells her that survival without autonomy is not survival. It is containment. That night, Spike and Kelly discuss their options. Staying means safety, food, shelter. Leaving means danger, uncertainty, and constant movement. But staying also means surrendering agency, identity, and choice. Kelly says she has already surrendered enough of herself in the past. She will not do it again. Spike agrees. He says he is tired of running, but he is more tired of being owned. They inform Elias of their decision to leave with Rose. Elias does not argue. He simply states that they will not be allowed to return. He instructs guards to escort them to the outer gate. As they walk through the settlement for the last time, Spike notices something he missed before. Some people watch them leave. Not with hostility. Not with indifference. But with longing. Outside the gate, Rose pauses. She looks back at the settlement, then at Spike and Kelly. She thanks them for choosing her. She says not everyone would. Spike responds that not everyone deserves to be chosen. They walk away from the settlement, back into the forest, back into uncertainty. The air feels different immediately. Lighter, less controlled, more dangerous, but more honest. Behind them, the gates close. The settlement remains strong, structured, and empty in ways that matter. Ahead of them, the world remains broken, violent, and unpredictable. But it is also alive. Spike realizes that survival is not just about avoiding death. It is about refusing to become something unrecognizable in the process. The forest opens into a wide plain, where the earth is cracked and pale, scarred by old fire lines and abandoned machinery. The air smells faintly of metal and ash, carried by wind that never seems to rest. Spike walks ahead, scanning the horizon, while Kelly and Rose follow several paces behind. Each step feels exposed, as though the land itself has no place to hide. They move carefully, conserving energy, avoiding open ground when possible. Without the cover of trees, every movement feels visible, every sound amplified. Rose keeps her radio wrapped tightly, checking it only when they stop to rest. Static hums through the cloth like a distant storm. Spike begins to notice patterns in the terrain. Shallow trenches run parallel across the land, remnants of old military exercises, or hastily dug defenses. Rusted vehicles sit half buried in dirt, stripped of useful parts long ago. These were not abandoned peacefully. They were left behind in retreat. Kelly stops near one of the vehicles, brushing dust from the door. Inside, she finds a faded insignia painted on the metal. It is not one she recognizes, but the shape suggests a faction once organized, once purposeful. The world did not collapse into silence. It fractured into fragments. They continue moving until the sun begins to dip toward the horizon. With daylight fading, they search for shelter. The open plain offers little protection, but Spike spots a low structure in the distance, partially collapsed but intact enough to provide cover. The building turns out to be an old agricultural storage facility. Its walls are thick concrete, its roof partially caved in. Inside, the air is stale but dry. They clear debris from one corner and set up a temporary camp. Spike takes first watch, sitting near the entrance, eyes trained on the darkening horizon. As night falls, the wind picks up, howling through the broken roof like a warning. Rose sits beside Spike, pulling her jacket tighter around herself. She asks him if he ever imagined surviving this long. He answers honestly. He says he never imagined anything beyond the next day. Rose tells him she used to imagine rebuilding cities, restoring power grids, reopening schools. She says she believed humanity would come together after the collapse. Spike asks her what she believes now. She says she believes humanity survives, but not always as itself. Later, Kelly joins them. She speaks quietly, her voice steady but heavy. She says the settlement they left behind will grow. She says more people will seek it. She says structures like that thrive in chaos because they offer certainty. Spike asks if she thinks that is wrong. Kelly says certainty without compassion becomes domination. She says she has seen it before. The night passes slowly. No movement disturbs the horizon, but the sense of being watched lingers. Spike cannot shake the feeling that the land itself is alive, observing, remembering. At dawn, they resume their journey. The plain stretches endlessly, broken only by distant ridges and the occasional cluster of ruined buildings. They follow a dried riverbed, using its natural depression for cover. Rose checks her radio again and hears something different this time. Not static, not silence. A voice. The signal is faint, distorted, but unmistakably human. Rose adjusts the frequency, tuning carefully. The voice becomes clearer. It is a man speaking in short, controlled bursts. He references coordinates, supplies, and something called the Sanctuary Line. Spike and Kelly listen intently. The transmission repeats on a loop. It appears to be a broadcast, but not widespread. It is targeted, directional. Someone is guiding survivors toward a specific location. Rose notes the coordinates and estimates the distance. It is not far, perhaps a day's journey. Spike considers the implications. Another settlement, another structure, another ideology. They debate whether to investigate. Kelly argues that knowledge is power, even if they do not join. Understanding the landscape of control and survival matters. Rose agrees. Spike remains cautious, but he recognizes the necessity of information. They adjust their route and head toward the coordinates. As they approach, the terrain changes again. The cracked earth gives way to rolling hills, dotted with sparse vegetation. The air feels cooler, the wind softer. There is a sense of transition, as though crossing into a different region of the world. By mid-afternoon, they see signs of habitation. Smoke rises from behind a ridge. Fences appear, made from scrap metal and reinforced wood. This settlement is smaller than the last, but still substantial. It is not hidden. It is not fortified to the same degree. It feels more open, less defensive. They approach cautiously. As they near the outer perimeter, they are greeted by two individuals, armed but relaxed. The guards do not immediately raise their weapons. Instead, they ask who they are and where they are coming from. Spike answers honestly. He says they are travelers. He says they are not affiliated with any group. He says they heard the broadcast. The guards exchange a glance, then nod. They lower their weapons and invite them inside. Inside the settlement, the atmosphere is noticeably different. People move freely. Children run between buildings. Conversations are audible. Laughter present. There is work happening, but it is not rigid. It feels organic, improvised, human. They are taken to meet the leader, a woman named Mara. She is younger than Elias. Her expression open, her posture relaxed but confident. She welcomes them without ceremony and invites them to sit. Mara explains that the settlement is called Haven. She says it was built by survivors who refused both chaos and control. She says they believe in shared responsibility, not enforced obedience. She says everyone contributes, but no one is owned. Spike listens carefully. He recognizes the contrast immediately. Where Elias spoke of doctrine, Mara speaks of choice. Where Elias spoke of efficiency, Mara speaks of resilience. Where Elias spoke of structure, Mara speaks of trust. Mara asks them about their journey. Spike shares more openly this time. He speaks of Sir Jimmy, of the Bone Temple, of Kelson, of Samson, of the settlement they just left. Mara listens without interruption. When he finishes, she nods. She says she has heard of Sir Jimmy. She says his influence spread through fear and spectacle. She says such figures often emerge when people are desperate for meaning. She says meaning should be built, not imposed. Kelly asks how Haven handles conflict. Mara answers that they talk, they argue, they vote when necessary. They make mistakes, they repair them. She says it is not perfect, but it is honest. Rose asks about the broadcast. Mara confirms that it is theirs. She says they send it out to reach survivors who are isolated, lost, or trapped in systems that do not serve them. She says they do not promise safety. They promise community. Spike asks about defenses. Mara points to the perimeter. She says they have guards, watch shifts, and evacuation plans. She says they are not naive. But she says they do not build walls high enough to imprison themselves. They are offered food, water, and a place to rest. Spike notices that no one checks their bags. No one restricts their movement. No one monitors their conversations. The trust is real, but it is also risky. That evening, they eat together in a communal area. The food is simple but nourishing. People share stories, laughter, and news from the outside world. Spike feels something unfamiliar. Not comfort, not safety. Something closer to belonging. After the meal, Kelly walks through the settlement alone, observing. She sees people repairing tools, teaching children, tending gardens, arguing, reconciling. She sees life, not survival. Rose sits with Mara, discussing the broadcast, communication networks, and the possibility of expanding reach without becoming invasive. They speak as collaborators, not as leader and follower. Spike walks to the edge of the settlement and looks out at the horizon. The world beyond Haven remains broken, violent, and uncertain. But inside, something fragile and valuable exists. A community built not on fear, not on control, but on mutual dependence. He remembers the longing in the eyes of the people in Elias's settlement. He realizes they did not want structure. They wanted relief. They wanted rest. They wanted to stop choosing. Haven does not offer rest. It offers responsibility. Later that night, Spike, Kelly, and Rose sit together, discussing their options. Haven is not perfect. It is vulnerable. It could be attacked. It could collapse. But it is alive in ways the other settlements were not. Kelly says she feels something here she has not felt in a long time. Not safety. Agency. Rose says she feels heard. Spike says he feels uncertain, and for the first time, he welcomes that uncertainty. Mara joins them and asks if they plan to stay. Spike asks what staying means. Mara answers that it means contributing. It means protecting the community. It means choosing to be part of something without being owned by it. Spike looks at Kelly and Rose. They exchange glances, understanding without words. They have been running for so long. They have been surviving. But survival alone is not enough. Spike tells Mara, they will stay, at least for now. He says they want to help. He says they want to learn. He says they want to build, not just endure. Mara smiles, not triumphantly, but gratefully. She welcomes them as members, not recruits. That night, Spike sleeps deeply for the first time in weeks. There are no locked doors, no watchful eyes, no rules written on walls. Only people nearby, breathing, dreaming, alive. In the morning, he wakes to the sound of voices, footsteps, and the quiet rhythm of life continuing. For the first time since the collapse, Spike does not feel like he is running from something. He feels like he is walking towards something. The aftermath of the bonfire left Spike and Kathy on edge, the air still thick with smoke and the stench of burned wood. Kathy, though exhausted and pregnant, moved with a deliberate urgency, aware that any hesitation could mean the end. Spike, renamed Jimmy by Sir Lord Jimmy Crystal, felt the weight of his new identity pressed down on him. A reminder that escape alone wouldn't free him from the twisted ties that bound him to the fingers. As they navigated the charred remains of the barn, the fire's glow illuminated the destruction left in the gang's wake. A cruel testament to Sir Jimmy's obsession with control and fear. Kathy's eyes darted constantly, scanning the perimeter for any sign of pursuit, while Spike wrestled with a gnawing sense of guilt, knowing he had failed to protect the other captives, particularly Tom. Yet in this moment, survival was paramount. Each step forward was measured, silent, a delicate dance between urgency and caution, as they fled into the cover of the surrounding woods. The once familiar landscape now seemed alien, warped by the chaos of human violence and the lingering threat of the infected, whose presence loomed even in the quiet of the night. Spike's escape attempt triggered an explosive reaction from Sir Jimmy, who projected his fury outward with manic energy, blaming the boy for every setback. She began to question the very foundation of Sir Jimmy's authority, speculating that the figure he worshipped as Satan might be a fabrication, a means of manipulating fear to maintain control. As the sun rose, the Fingers were forced to confront the reality that their power was not absolute, that the legend of Satan could be challenged, and that cracks had formed in the seemingly impenetrable facade of their leader. This moment of tension revealed the malleability of human belief under duress, a theme that Kelson had observed from afar, while continuing his careful maintenance of the Bone Temple. Dr. Ian Kelson remained a quiet force amid the unfolding chaos. Within the ossuary he tended to Samson, the alpha infected whose unusual behavior had sparked both curiosity and hope. Samson's repeated returns to the Bone Temple suggested a dependence on the sedative Kelson administered, and the doctor, ever patient, observed these interactions with a clinical eye. Over time, a fragile bond seemed to emerge. Samson, who had once attacked indiscriminately, now exhibited behaviors that suggested cognition, even self-restraint. He consumed berries instead of raw flesh, and engaged in rudimentary forms of play, dressing himself in makeshift garments as if to assert a semblance of normalcy. Kelson, grappling with the ethical dilemma of whether to euthanize the creature, found himself torn between duty and empathy. When Samson muttered the word moon, Kelson's mind raced, interpreting this as a potential clue that the virus's effects could be mitigated or even reversed. The alpha's partial lucidity became a focal point for Kelson's scientific curiosity, a symbol of the thin line separating the monstrous from the human in this fractured world. As the Fingers pursued Kathy and Spike, the group's violence and fanaticism intensified. Sir Jimmy, obsessed with reasserting his dominance, coerced his followers into grotesque displays of brutality, pushing them to commit acts that tested the limits of morality and loyalty. Spike, caught between fear and a nascent sense of agency, witnessed the moral collapse around him, understanding that the gang's cohesion relied not on camaraderie, but on terror. The surviving members of the Fingers, including Jemima and Fox, were entangled in a web of allegiance and survival, their choices dictated by the volatile whims of their leader. When confrontations erupted, the line between victim and perpetrator blurred. Tom's encounter with Jemima, which ended in a desperate act of survival by Kathy, underscored the unpredictable nature of violence in a world where rules had dissolved. Each death, each act of defiance, reshaped the hierarchy within the gang, destabilizing Sir Jimmy's control and setting the stage for further upheaval. In parallel, Spike and Kathy navigated the wilderness, relying on instincts honed by repeated exposure to danger. The terrain, scarred by the infected outbreak and human conflict, presented obstacles both natural and unnatural. Rivers and ravines, overgrown pathways, and abandoned structures became arenas of tension, where every misstep carried lethal consequences. Kathy's pregnancy added an additional layer of complexity. limiting her mobility and heightening Spike's protective instincts. Conversations were sparse, punctuated by shared glances and subtle gestures, as words seemed inadequate in the face of pervasive threat. Their trust, though tentative, was forged in the crucible of survival, a fragile but necessary bond in a landscape governed by death and deception. Back at the Bone Temple, Kelson prepared for the inevitable confrontation with Sir Jimmy and the Fingers. His understanding of the gang's psychology informed his strategies, as he anticipated their movements and intentions. The Doctor's use of hallucinogenics, carefully calibrated, became a tool to manipulate perception, creating illusions that destabilized the gang's grasp on reality. By exploiting the Fingers' belief in a supernatural authority, Kelson aimed to redirect their aggression, preserving life where possible and neutralizing threats through cunning rather than brute force. Samson's presence amplified the impact of these tactics. The Alpha's imposing figure, coupled with his intermittent lucidity, created a dissonance that unsettled even the most fanatical members of the Fingers. The interplay between human ingenuity and primal instinct became central to Kelson's efforts, highlighting the precarious balance between intelligence and survival in a post-apocalyptic landscape. The tension culminated as Spike, Inc., and the remaining gang members approached the Bone Temple. Sir Jimmy, seeking to confront the perceived source of his adversities, prepared a display designed to awe and intimidate. Pyrotechnics, ritualistic gestures, and carefully orchestrated chaos formed the backdrop against which human ambition and fear collided. Kelson, fully aware of the stakes, engaged in a psychological battle, manipulating perception to create opportunities for resistance and escape. Spike's recognition of the unfolding strategy empowered him to act decisively, leveraging moments of confusion to protect himself and others. Inc.'s transformation from skeptical follower to active participant illustrated the fluidity of morality in extreme circumstances. Her choices, informed by reason and emerging empathy, contrasted sharply with Sir Jimmy's destructive fanaticism. The narrative tension is compounded by the dual threats of human cruelty and the unpredictable behavior of the infected, while the evolving bonds between characters highlight the possibility of redemption and resilience, even amidst horror. Every decision, every act of defiance or compliance, contributes to the intricate web of cause and effect. The Bone Temple itself, a repository of memory and mortality, serves as a symbolic anchor throughout, reminding characters and audience alike that survival is not merely physical, but moral and psychological, tested continuously by the demands of a world unmoored from conventional order. The dawn broke over the desolate landscape, casting an orange hue across skeletal trees and crumbling ruins. Spike and Kelly moved cautiously, their senses sharpened by the night's terror. Each step required deliberation, for the slightest miscalculation could attract attention from the remaining infected or from other desperate survivors. The wind carried a faint metallic scent, remnants of blood and smoke from the previous night's violence. Silence dominated, broken only by distant guttural sounds that reminded them that death could approach unseen. Kelly maintained a steady pace, mindful of Spike's exhaustion, and encouraged careful breathing. Her eyes scanned the horizon, interpreting shadows as potential threats. Yet she forced herself to trust in observation and reason rather than assumption. Spike, still haunted by the confrontation with Sir Jimmy and the Fingers, felt the weight of responsibility for Kelly and for the unborn child whose existence complicated every decision. Despite fear, a growing resolve solidified within him. Survival required clarity, strategy, and courage. At the Bone Temple, Dr. Ian Kelson's body lay motionless. Yet the significance of his sacrifice resonated throughout the vicinity. Samson, the Alpha infected, loomed nearby, his towering presence both protective and terrifying. The creature's gaze remained fixed on the temple, the subtle intelligence in his expression suggesting comprehension of loss and allegiance. Samson's behavior, a curious mixture of obedience and instinct, illustrated the delicate boundary between the animal and the human within the infected. Kelson's meticulous experiments and understanding of viral pathology had yielded insights that now influenced the movement and behavior of the Alpha Samson. Intervention in the previous confrontations had proved pivotal, demonstrating that the infected could act with intention when guided by the right stimuli. The implications of this discovery lingered. If controlled or influenced, the infected could serve as a deterrent against human aggression, reshaping survival strategies in a world devastated by the epidemic. Elsewhere, the remnants of the Fingers grappled with the collapse of their authority. Sir Jimmy's death created a vacuum, leaving his followers in disarray. Inc., now fully asserting her identity as Kelly, assumed a position of pragmatic leadership. She assessed resources, morale, and potential threats, understanding that any misjudgment could result in annihilation. Jimama, weakened and demoralized, submitted reluctantly to Kelly's decisions, recognizing the necessity of rational guidance over blind obedience. The group's fragmented hierarchy reflected the broader theme of human adaptability in crisis. Those willing to analyze, reason, and act ethically found survival more attainable than those relying on intimidation and superstition. Within this microcosm, the interplay of fear, loyalty, and strategic thinking demonstrated the psychological complexity underlying human behavior in extreme circumstances. Decisions were no longer governed solely by instinct, but by the interplay of observation, deduction, and moral evaluation. Spike and Kelly approached an abandoned settlement. Buildings partially collapsed, and streets littered with debris. The structures bore the marks of previous occupation and violent encounters, providing both shelter and potential danger. They entered cautiously, moving from shadow to shadow, their movements deliberate and silent. The interior spaces revealed signs of hasty departure, remnants of food, personal items, and torn clothing scattered across floors. Spike's gaze lingered on these objects, imagining the lives abruptly interrupted, the ordinary existence transformed into chaos. Each abandoned dwelling contained its own narrative of struggle, resilience, and failure, reinforcing the fragility of human endeavors in a post-apocalyptic world. Kelly examined windows and doorways, determining angles of visibility and potential escape routes. Her tactical thinking, informed by past encounters and survival instincts. Their progress required attention to environmental cues, patience, and an understanding of human and infected psychology alike. In a distant clearing, remnants of the Fingers regrouped, still reeling from the revelation of Sir Jimmy's death. The group debated their next course of action, weighing options between abandoning the territory, seeking new victims, or attempting to consolidate power under Kelly's emerging authority. Fear of the infected remained a constant factor, influencing choices and restricting movements. Jemima's apprehension contrasted with Kelly's calculated risk assessment. While some were paralyzed by instinctive terror, others demonstrated adaptability through critical analysis. The clearing became a stage for negotiation, influence, and assertion of control. Kelly's leadership relied not on coercion but on reasoned guidance, providing stability in a moment of uncertainty. The psychological dynamics within the Fingers illustrated the broader human struggle to maintain cohesion and purpose amid environmental collapse and moral decay. Simultaneously, Spike experienced recurring memories of confrontation, moments of near-death, and the faces of the victims from prior encounters. These recollections, vivid and unrelenting, reinforced the stakes of survival. He processed the events analytically, identifying patterns in the behavior of both humans and infected. Observing interactions, understanding motivations, and predicting potential outcomes became tools not only for immediate safety, but also for long-term planning. Spike's evolution, from frightened participant to strategic actor, reflected the necessity of cognitive flexibility in extreme circumstances. His partnership with Kelly facilitated mutual reinforcement. Each contributed complementary skills, awareness, and judgment, enhancing the probability of continued survival. Approaching the outskirts of the settlement, Spike and Kelly observed a distant movement. A small group of infected appeared, their coordinated activity suggesting either heightened intelligence or random convergence. The pair adopted a measured response, evaluating options, potential trajectories, and the implications of engagement versus evasion. Kelly's previous observations of Samson informed her understanding. Infected could exhibit selective aggression, territorial behavior, and adaptive responses. Applying this knowledge, she determined an optimal path that minimized confrontation while maintaining forward momentum. Spike, recognizing the validity of this strategy, adjusted his pace and posture accordingly, demonstrating the integration of analytical observation into instinctive reaction. The surrounding environment, though static in appearance, remained dynamic in its influence over movement, perception, and decision. Inside the settlement, they discovered remnants of scientific equipment, medical supplies, and preserved documents, suggesting prior occupation by researchers or survivors with advanced knowledge. Kelly and Spike assessed the potential utility of these resources. Medical supplies offered immediate relief for injuries and preventive care for potential infections. Documents, carefully examined, provided insight into previous strategies for survival, containment of infection, and adaptive technologies employed by those who preceded them. This discovery illuminated the capacity for human ingenuity, even amidst the decay of societal structures. Knowledge, codified and preserved, became a crucial asset in navigating the hazards of this altered world. Kelly and Spike recognized that their survival depended not only on physical endurance, but also on intellectual engagement, the ability to interpret and apply information effectively. As night fell, the settlement transformed under the shadow of uncertainty. Light sources became critical for navigation, signaling, and maintaining morale. Shadows deepened, obscuring potential dangers while providing cover for movement. Spike and Kelly established temporary shelter within a structurally sound building, reinforcing windows and entrances with debris. They remained vigilant, conscious that threats could emerge both externally and internally. The environment demanded continuous assessment, balancing risk against necessity. Their decisions, informed by prior experiences and acute observation, exemplified the integration of cognitive reasoning with physical execution. Within this temporary refuge, the pair experienced a fragile sense of safety, tempered by the awareness that it existed only as long as vigilance persisted. The psychological impact of the day's events manifested through subtle behavioral shifts. Kelly, traditionally assertive, demonstrated patience in anticipating threats, reinforcing Spike's confidence and encouraging collaborative problem-solving. Spike's analytical skills complemented Kelly's tactical planning, forming a synergy of reasoning and action. Together, they anticipated the infected's movements, interpreted environmental cues, and projected potential outcomes of various choices. This cooperative dynamic emphasized the necessity of coordination and mutual understanding in extreme conditions. Survival hinged not merely on individual capability but on the capacity to integrate diverse skills, share responsibility, and maintain situational awareness under persistent stress. By the end of the night, the settlement offered temporary reprieve, yet remained fraught with uncertainty. Spike and Kelly, their minds alert and their bodies fatigued, understood that each decision bore consequences beyond immediate survival. The interplay between human ingenuity, ethical judgment, and environmental awareness dictated the trajectory of their journey. The landscape, simultaneously familiar and alien, shaped choices and tested resilience. Every encounter with the infected, every interaction with other survivors, and every strategic decision reinforced the delicate balance between life and death. The Bone Temple, Samson's presence, and the legacy of Dr. Ian Kelson continued to influence outcomes, serving as a moral and psychological anchor within the chaos of the post-apocalyptic world. Dawn arrived slowly, painting the horizon with muted shades of rose and amber. Spike and Kelly emerged from their makeshift shelter, surveying the quiet devastation surrounding them. The settlement they had navigated the previous day now appeared even more menacing under the soft morning light. Collapsed buildings and debris cast long shadows across cracked streets, each shadow harboring the potential for danger. The air was heavy with a mixture of decay and moisture, a reminder of the epidemic's lingering presence and the vulnerability of the survivors. Kelly moved first, her gaze sweeping for movement or unusual patterns. Spike followed closely, attentive to the subtle cues she interpreted: the slight rustle of fabric, the glint of a broken window, the scent of decay carried on the breeze. Their careful progression reflected a hard-earned discipline. Survival demanded vigilance, patience, and acute awareness of both the environment and its inhabitants. As they advanced, remnants of the Fingers Gang became increasingly evident. Scattered personal effects, makeshift weapons, and markings etched into walls revealed traces of previous skirmishes and hierarchical struggle. The death of Sir Jimmy had left a vacuum, and the disbanded members of the gang now existed as isolated individuals, fearful, desperate, and unpredictable. Kelly analyzed these clues, recognizing patterns that indicated potential threats or safe passages. Spike, still processing the chaos of recent events, gradually internalized her analytical approach, learning to anticipate consequences and interpret the environment with precision. The interplay of observation and deduction became their primary defense mechanism, a cognitive armor against both human and infected adversaries. Their exploration led them to a partially intact laboratory, a building long abandoned but still containing equipment and records that hinted at prior experimentation. Kelly and Spike carefully inspected the space, noting the condition of medical supplies, documentation of viral behavior, and improvised containment apparatus. The information revealed that prior occupants had studied infected behavior, attempted interventions, and experimented with sedation techniques similar to those employed by Dr. Ian Kelson. The laboratory, though dilapidated, offered insight into methodologies that could assist in the ongoing navigation of threats. Spike examined chemical vials and mechanical instruments, realizing that survival extended beyond physical endurance. Knowledge acquisition and critical application of intelligence were equally essential. Kelly observed his methodical approach, acknowledging that his growing analytical capacity complemented her tactical acumen, forming a partnership grounded in competence and mutual trust. While surveying the surrounding area, they noticed subtle signs of movement beyond the laboratory windows. Shadows flitted across the cracked exterior walls, accompanied by the faint, rhythmic thumping indicative of infected activity. Samson, the Alpha, moved at a distance, displaying controlled behavior that suggested awareness of their presence. Kelly interpreted his pattern as both protective and directive. He maintained territorial boundaries while exhibiting recognition of the individuals he had previously observed. The strategic utilization of Samson's predictable responses offered both reassurance and an opportunity. The pair adjusted their route, calculating trajectories that minimized risk while leveraging the Alpha's behavior to create an informal buffer zone. Every decision required integration of prior observations, anticipation of variable responses, and assessment of environmental variables. As they progressed, Spike and Kelly encountered a group of survivors, a small family seeking refuge in a partially intact structure. The survivors' initial fear manifested in defensive postures, avoidance of eye contact, and tentative gestures. Kelly approached with calm authority, communicating intent through measured speech and controlled movements. Spike remained observant, evaluating facial expressions, body language, and vocal inflections for credibility and potential danger. Over time, the survivors' apprehension diminished, and dialogue ensued, allowing an exchange of information regarding the surrounding territory, infected movement, and the previous activities of rogue humans. The meeting illustrated the complex social dynamics that persisted despite societal collapse. Trust required demonstration of competence, moral alignment, and situational awareness. Misjudgment carried immediate consequences, reinforcing the delicate equilibrium between caution and necessary engagement. During the encounter, they learned of a concealed cache of supplies located within the periphery of the abandoned settlement. The family provided directions and described environmental markers, emphasizing the risks associated with extraction. Spike and Kelly assessed the feasibility of retrieval, considering factors such as proximity to infected clusters, line-of-sight exposure, and potential for human conflict. Kelly formulated a sequential plan: reconnaissance first, observation of movement patterns second, and timed extraction third. Spike noted variations in infected behavior compared to prior encounters, hypothesizing that prolonged exposure to sedatives or environmental factors could influence aggression levels. This evolving understanding informed their tactical decision-making, integrating empirical observation with experiential knowledge to optimize safety and resource acquisition. Progressing toward the cache, they encountered remnants of infrastructure modified for defense. Barricades, crude alarms, and rudimentary traps indicated prior human ingenuity and an instinct for survival in a world dominated by chaos. Spike inspected each modification, deducing the rationale, effectiveness, and potential risks. Kelly observed his analytical process, noting his capacity to balance theoretical understanding with practical application. Their approach combined immediate hazard assessment with strategic foresight, a dual methodology that increased the likelihood of successful resource retrieval while maintaining operational security. The environment itself became a dynamic participant in survival strategy, demanding interaction that was simultaneously analytical, adaptive, and cautious. The extraction of supplies demanded coordination, precision, and attention to environmental variables. Spike and Kelly synchronized movements, minimizing noise and exposure, while simultaneously evaluating structural stability and potential concealment options. Each action was deliberate, reflecting an accumulation of prior experiences and careful anticipation of contingencies. Materials retrieved included preserved food, medical supplies, and rudimentary defensive implements. The significance extended beyond immediate utility. The acquisition reinforced cognitive engagement, reinforced trust, and demonstrated the capability for reasoned action under pressure. Survival in this context was not simply a matter of physical endurance, but an interplay of knowledge, observation, and calculated decision-making. Following retrieval, they retreated to a defensible location, assessing the utility of their environment for temporary refuge. Kelly instructed Spike to maintain constant vigilance while she established a secure perimeter using debris and environmental features. Observation of environmental patterns, wind direction, and auditory cues informed the placement of defensive measures. Samson remained visible at a distance, maintaining a presence that discouraged aggressive intrusion while simultaneously providing situational intelligence. The integration of human cognition with behavioral observation of the infected exemplified a nuanced understanding of interspecies interaction, where survival required interpretation of patterns, application of tactical principles, and anticipation of unpredictable behavior. Nightfall imposed additional cognitive and physiological challenges. Darkness altered perception, increasing reliance on memory, prior observation, and predictive reasoning. Kelly and Spike monitored environmental cues, including sounds, shadows, and olfactory indicators, adjusting position and posture to maximize strategic advantage. The psychological strain of sustained alertness influenced decisions, yet their methodical approach mitigated potential errors. The balance between rest and vigilance reflected an understanding of human limitations, while prioritizing safety and preparedness. Each moment became a test of judgment, coordination, and applied experience, highlighting the enduring interplay of cognitive acuity and environmental awareness in post-apocalyptic survival. Amid the darkness, distant echoes signaled movement within the perimeter. The survivors, previously met, communicated non-verbally to indicate potential danger. Spike and Kelly assessed the situation, integrating auditory data with prior visual observations. Analysis of rhythm, repetition, and irregularity in sounds informed predictions regarding the type and proximity of approaching entities. This observation reinforced a broader understanding of survival dynamics, where intelligence extended beyond physical action into anticipatory reasoning and pattern recognition. The capacity to interpret environmental signals, predict behavior, and adapt strategy in real time exemplified the combination of analytical cognition and situational awareness that defined their survival methodology. By the night's conclusion, Spike and Kelly had established a temporary equilibrium, balancing environmental risk, cognitive effort, and resource management. The combination of strategic observation, cooperative decision-making, and disciplined execution allowed them to navigate complex hazards while maintaining the integrity of acquired resources. Every movement, assessment, and interaction contributed to a larger schema of survival, integrating human ingenuity, applied knowledge, and adaptive flexibility. Within the quiet of the abandoned settlement, they found a tenuous yet functional balance, poised to confront future challenges with measured reasoning, strategic coordination, and mutual trust. Morning light filtered through a veil of gray clouds, illuminating the desolate streets where Spike and Kelly prepared to continue their journey. The stillness of the city concealed its dangers beneath silence, a deceptive calm that demanded constant scrutiny. The pair moved with deliberate precision, scanning every surface, every shadow, every broken window for signs of motion or disturbance. Each step reflected an internal calculation, an evaluation of probability, consequence, and environmental variables. The remnants of humanity scattered throughout the landscape served as both warning and instruction, reminders of fragility and resilience intertwined. Their route carried them toward the outskirts of the settlement, where infrastructure gradually yielded to wilderness. Abandoned vehicles rested among encroaching vegetation, their rusted frames overtaken by vines and moss. Kelly noted changes in terrain, soil composition, and visibility, adjusting their path to maintain maximum awareness while minimizing exposure. Spike mirrored her movements, internalizing her techniques through observation and repetition. The wilderness demanded a different form of vigilance, one shaped by auditory sensitivity and spatial reasoning, rather than structural navigation. Each environmental shift required cognitive recalibration, reinforcing adaptability as a fundamental survival skill. As they advanced, distant sounds interrupted the quiet, irregular and rhythmic, distinct from natural wildlife patterns. Spike paused, analyzing cadence and volume, while Kelly interpreted directional origin and potential trajectory. The sounds suggested infected movement at a distance, neither aggressive nor static, but exploratory. This behavior indicated a shift in infected dynamics, possibly influenced by prolonged exposure to sedatives or altered environmental stimuli. Spike recorded visual markers, noting gait irregularities, spatial awareness, and response to environmental stimuli. Kelly assessed patterns of group cohesion, leadership, and territorial awareness. The infected no longer appeared as purely chaotic entities, but as evolving organisms with adaptive tendencies. This observation introduced ethical and strategic complexity, challenging prior perceptions of the infected as irreversibly lost. Knowledge of this behavioral evolution influenced tactical decision-making, encouraging caution, analysis, and restraint rather than immediate confrontation. The terrain transitioned into a partially forested area, where tree cover created layered visibility and altered acoustics. Shadows shifted unpredictably, and sound reverberated with distortion, complicating directional accuracy. Spike relied on memory and spatial mapping to maintain orientation, while Kelly utilized environmental markers and natural landmarks to ensure continuity of movement. Their coordination exemplified integrated cognition, combining analytical reasoning with experiential knowledge. Survival extended beyond avoidance of infected, encompassing the navigation of natural hazards and the management of physiological endurance. Their progression revealed a derelict facility, concealed within the forest, its architecture partially obscured by foliage and debris. The structure exhibited signs of previous habitation, including improvised fortifications, discarded equipment, and faint symbols etched into exterior surfaces. Kelly interpreted these indicators as evidence of prior human occupation, possibly associated with medical experimentation or strategic observation. Spike analyzed structural integrity, noting areas of collapse, potential entry points, and defensive advantages. The facility presented both opportunity and risk, offering potential resources and information while harboring unknown threats. Strategic evaluation required balancing curiosity with caution, a decision informed by prior experiences and current environmental conditions. They approached with measured movements, minimizing noise and visual disruption. Kelly surveyed the perimeter, identifying vantage points and potential escape routes. Spike inspected debris for recent disturbance, assessing whether the location remained occupied or abandoned. The absence of fresh footprints, combined with the advanced decay of materials, suggested prolonged vacancy. The atmosphere conveyed a history of experimentation, desperation, and ethical compromise, reflecting humanity's struggle to regain control over a transformed world. Spike examined written records, decoding fragmented notes and schematic diagrams that detailed attempts to modify infected behavior. The research focused on neurological modulation, sedative compounds, and behavioral conditioning. Although incomplete, the documentation provided insight into methodologies that paralleled Dr. Ian Kelson's approach. Kelly analyzed spatial organization, identifying areas designated for observation, containment, and intervention. The facility represented an intersection of science and survival, illustrating humanity's persistent effort to understand and manage the infected rather than merely avoid them. This realization reframed the narrative of survival, emphasizing intellectual resilience alongside physical endurance. As they continued exploration, subtle environmental changes signaled external presence. Kelly halted, initiating silent communication through gesture and posture. Spike aligned his position, maintaining visual coverage while minimizing profile. The environment itself appeared to respond to their presence, as distant sounds altered rhythm and proximity. A group of infected emerged at a distance, their movement coordinated yet restrained. Their behavior diverged from prior aggressive patterns, exhibiting cautious exploration rather than immediate pursuit. Spike observed their responses to environmental stimuli, noting attention to sound, light, and spatial arrangement. Kelly assessed the group's structure, identifying potential leadership and cohesion dynamics. Spike documented behavioral variables, correlating movement patterns with environmental context. The moment represented a cognitive shift, where survival strategies incorporated scientific inquiry and ethical consideration, rather than purely defensive measures. The world had transformed into a dynamic ecosystem, where understanding complexity offered greater long-term security than immediate confrontation. Following the encounter, Spike and Kelly withdrew from the facility, maintaining spatial awareness and environmental alignment. Their movement reflected a synthesis of caution, curiosity, and strategic foresight. The information obtained, both behavioral and structural, contributed to a broader understanding of survival dynamics. Knowledge acquisition, environmental adaptation, and cooperative analysis formed the foundation of their evolving strategy. Each experience reinforced the necessity of cognitive engagement, disciplined observation, and emotional regulation within a landscape defined by uncertainty. Spike and Kelly navigated toward a defensible location identified through prior reconnaissance. Kelly evaluated terrain elevation, natural barriers, and visibility corridors, while Spike assessed acoustic properties and potential concealment opportunities. Their chosen location provided both physical protection and strategic oversight, allowing for early detection of movement and environmental change. Within the refuge, they organized resources, assessed equipment integrity, and evaluated physical condition. Spike examined supplies retrieved from previous encounters, categorizing them according to utility, durability, and accessibility. Kelly assessed environmental variables, including wind direction, temperature fluctuation, and potential wildlife presence. Each decision contributed to a structured approach that prioritized continuity, adaptability, and strategic foresight. Spike and Kelly maintained alertness, interpreting subtle environmental signals and adjusting posture and orientation accordingly. The absence of overt threats did not diminish vigilance. Rather, it reinforced the necessity of sustained awareness. The night concluded, with an equilibrium defined by preparedness rather than complacency. The journey continued, shaped by evolving threats, ethical complexity, and the enduring necessity of cooperation. Within the silence of the wilderness, they remained poised, informed, and vigilant, prepared to confront the unknown with disciplined reasoning and unwavering resolve. Dawn arrived without warmth, its pale light spreading across a landscape shaped by decay and quiet endurance. Spike and Kelly emerged from their shelter with measured composure, their movements deliberate and precise. The environment felt altered, not through visible change, but through an underlying tension that suggested unseen motion and distant awareness. The air carried faint traces of moisture and organic matter, producing an atmosphere dense with memory and implication. Every step forward required attentiveness to texture, sound, and spatial orientation, reinforcing the necessity of continuous awareness in a world governed by uncertainty. As they approached the ridge, they observed subtle environmental disturbances that indicated recent movement. Grass blades exhibited directional displacement, and soil patterns suggested passage by entities of considerable mass. Kelly interpreted these signs as evidence of infected migration, possibly guided by instinctual memory or altered neurological stimuli. Spike assessed the spacing and trajectory of the disturbances, correlating them with prior observations of group dynamics. The infected, once driven by unrestrained aggression, now appeared governed by an evolving form of collective behavior. This progression introduced both opportunity and risk, altering strategic calculations and ethical considerations. They advanced toward the settlement with disciplined caution, minimizing visibility and auditory presence. Kelly monitored perimeter boundaries, while Spike evaluated internal movement patterns through indirect indicators such as shadow displacement and ambient sound distortion. The absence of overt activity did not equate to safety. Rather, it intensified the need for comprehensive inspection. Each structure conveyed a narrative of abandonment shaped by fear, urgency, and the erosion of hope. The environment bore witness to humanity's attempt to impose order upon chaos, a struggle that remained unresolved. Inside one of the structures, Spike discovered remnants of communication equipment, including damaged transmitters and fragmented data logs. Kelly examined containment chambers and observational corridors, identifying evidence of prolonged habitation and systematic research. The convergence of scientific inquiry and survival necessity underscored humanity's persistent effort to regain agency within a transformed world. The research emphasized neurological modulation through chemical intervention and environmental conditioning. Although incomplete, the documentation suggested incremental success in altering infected behavior, reinforcing hypotheses formed through recent observation. Kelly assessed the physical infrastructure, identifying design patterns intended to facilitate observation and control, rather than immediate elimination. Kelly signaled immediate stillness, and Spike adjusted posture to minimize silhouette exposure. Through structural apertures, they observed infected entities moving in coordinated patterns, maintaining spatial awareness and mutual orientation. The infected exhibited hesitation upon nearing the settlement, pausing to assess environmental stimuli before proceeding. This behavior indicated a degree of environmental cognition, potentially influenced by prior exposure to human structures or chemical intervention. Spike noted variations in individual responses, suggesting hierarchical dynamics or differential conditioning. Kelly interpreted these patterns as evidence of emergent structure within infected groups, introducing complexity to survival calculus. The infected no longer represented a singular threat profile, but a spectrum of adaptive behaviors requiring nuanced interpretation. Recognizing the informational value of the encounter, Kelly prioritized concealment over confrontation. Spike continued observational documentation, correlating behavior with environmental context and prior data. Spike categorized materials according to informational value, potential application, and durability. As daylight progressed, environmental conditions shifted, introducing fluctuations in temperature, humidity, and wind direction. Spike monitored these variables, adjusting sensory calibration and movement strategy accordingly. Kelly evaluated terrain response to weather changes, anticipating alterations in mobility and visibility. The dynamic interplay between environment and survival strategy reinforced the necessity of continuous adaptation. Each variable introduced complexity, requiring real-time analysis and responsive modification of behavior. Spike maintained rearward observation, monitoring for pursuit or environmental reaction. As they traversed open terrain, Spike reflected on the ethical implications of their observations. The infected, once perceived as irreversibly lost, now exhibited behaviors suggestive of partial cognitive preservation or adaptation. This realization challenged foundational assumptions regarding survival ethics and strategic engagement. Kelly shared this contemplation, acknowledging the necessity of balancing survival imperatives with moral responsibility. Their dialogue, though minimal, conveyed profound implications for future interaction strategies and long-term objectives. Approaching a natural boundary marked by elevated terrain and reduced vegetation density, Spike and Kelly prepared for environmental transition. Kelly evaluated potential vantage points and natural fortifications, while Spike assessed acoustic propagation and visibility gradients. The landscape offered both exposure and opportunity, demanding strategic positioning and continuous vigilance. Each decision reflected an integration of empirical observation, experiential knowledge, and ethical consideration. As dusk approached, the environment assumed a muted tone, shadows lengthening across uneven terrain. Spike and Kelly identified a defensible location, characterized by natural barriers, elevated perspective, and controlled access points. Kelly evaluated spatial orientation and environmental stability, while Spike assessed acoustic behavior and potential concealment. The establishment of temporary refuge required careful coordination, integrating spatial reasoning, environmental awareness, and cooperative execution. The day concluded with a sense of cautious equilibrium, defined by preparedness rather than complacency. Spike and Kelly had expanded their understanding of the infected, acquired valuable resources, and refined their survival methodology. Each experience contributed to a cumulative framework of adaptation, resilience, and cognitive engagement. The journey continued, shaped by evolving threats, ethical complexity, and the enduring necessity of cooperation. Within the silence of the terrain, they remained poised, informed, and vigilant, prepared to confront the unknown with disciplined reasoning and unwavering resolve. After the chaos that scattered the fingers and left bodies behind, the world feels wider but not safer. Spike and Kelly move through ruined landscapes where silence carries weight, where every abandoned structure feels like it remembers who once lived there. The infected are still present, but what truly unsettles is how close the uninfected have come to mirroring them. Survival no longer looks heroic. It looks cautious, tired, and morally strained. Spike is no longer the frightened boy pulled into brutality against his will. He has seen enough to recognize patterns, to sense when people hide cruelty behind belief, tradition, or fear. Kelly walks beside him with a steadier resolve, no longer hiding behind the name she was given by Sir Jimmy, reclaiming her identity as a way to reclaim her humanity. Their bond is quiet, not romanticized, but built from shared trauma and the simple need to trust someone in a world that punishes trust. As they travel, memories of the Bone Temple linger like a stain that cannot be washed away. Kelson's work, once dismissed as madness, now feels like one of the few sincere attempts to preserve meaning in a broken world. The idea that the infected might hold fragments of memory, emotion, or even reason continues to haunt Spike. He thinks about Samson, about the way calm briefly returned when sedation and care replaced fear and aggression. It forces an uncomfortable thought. Perhaps the virus did not erase humanity as completely as people believed. Perhaps it merely buried it under pain, confusion, and untreated illness. This realization does not bring comfort. It brings responsibility. If the infected are not simply monsters, then killing them becomes something heavier, something that leaves a mark on the soul of the survivor. Their encounters with smaller survivor groups reflect this shift in perspective. Some camps are ruled by rigid rules and quiet terror, others by fragile cooperation that feels one bad night away from collapse. Spike notices how belief systems form quickly, how people cling to symbols, leaders, or rituals to explain a world that stopped making sense decades ago. Sir Jimmy was not an anomaly, he was a warning. In the absence of structure, charisma replaces wisdom, and cruelty often disguises itself as order. Kelly understands this too well. She sees how easily people give up agency for safety, how fear invites obedience. Her time among the Fingers has made her alert to the early signs of manipulation, and she steers Spike away from places where devotion feels louder than compassion. The infected remained a constant threat, but they no longer dominate every moment. Instead, tension builds through uncertainty. At times, Spike catches glimpses of behavior that does not fit the old rules. Infected lingering instead of attacking, reacting to sound, with something close to curiosity recoiling from fire or light, in ways that suggest memory rather than instinct. These moments never last long, often ending in sudden violence, but they plant questions that cannot be ignored. Kelson believed treatment was possible, that the virus amplified something already broken, rather than creating something entirely new. Spike begins to wonder how many people were lost, not to the infection itself, but to the decision to stop trying to understand it. Guilt surfaces in quiet moments. Guilt over surviving when others did not. Guilt over the violence he participated in. Even guilt over wanting a future in a world that seems determined to erase it. Kelly becomes a grounding presence, not through speeches, but through shared silence and small acts of care. She reminds him that survival does not require surrendering empathy, even if empathy hurts. Their conversations are restrained, weighted with things left unsaid, reflecting how trauma reshapes language itself. Words become careful, chosen, because careless honesty can reopen wounds that never truly healed. The environment mirrors this internal struggle. Cities appear skeletal, stripped of purpose, while rural spaces feel deceptive in their beauty. Nature has reclaimed roads and buildings, indifferent to the suffering that once filled them. This contrast emphasizes a central idea. The world did not end. Humanity fractured. Life continues, but meaning must be rebuilt deliberately. Spike begins to understand that the future will not be decided by defeating the infected alone, but by choosing what kind of people the survivors become. The greatest danger is not the virus, but the normalization of brutality as a way of life. They are no longer simply escaping danger. They are deciding what to carry forward. Kelson's belief in treatment, Nina's refusal to accept false narratives, and even Samson's brief moments of clarity all converge into a fragile hope that refuses to die completely. This hope is not optimistic or reassuring. It is heavy, demanding effort and sacrifice. It suggests that redemption, if it exists, will not come through victory, but through restraint, understanding, and the courage to see humanity where it is easiest to deny it. The landscape grows harsher as Spike and Kelly move farther from the quiet community. Not because the world itself changes, but because their awareness does. Every sound now carries weight. Every abandoned structure feels less like shelter and more like a question. They have tasted a different way of living, one built on cooperation rather than control, and this makes the ruins around them feel heavier. The absence of that fragile community's balance now leaves a hollow echo in their thoughts. Survival, they realize, is not only about avoiding death, it is also about choosing what kind of life feels worth preserving. They travel along a river that once supported a large city, now reduced to skeletal bridges and flooded streets. Water has become both resource and threat. It provides hydration, but also hides danger beneath its surface. Spike remembers stories of infected drifting in currents, their bodies carried far from the original outbreak zones, spreading uncertainty as much as disease. This river feels like a boundary between what the world was and what it has become. Its steady flow contrasts sharply with the stillness of the ruined skyline beside it, reminding them that nature continues forward, even when humanity stumbles. As they navigate the outskirts of the city, they encounter signs of organized resistance against the infected. Barricades made from buses and scrap metal form narrow corridors designed to funnel movement. Spike studies the design carefully. It is tactical, efficient, and deliberate, but also cold. These structures were not built to protect people inside the city, but to prevent anything from leaving it. This suggests that someone once tried to contain an outbreak here, sealing entire populations inside without escape. The thought unsettles him deeply. Containment may preserve larger numbers, but it demands sacrifice from those trapped within. It forces the question of who decides which lives are worth saving and which are expendable. Kelly notices messages painted on walls, not warnings, but pleas. Names, dates, fragments of final thoughts remain frozen in peeling paint. These messages do not beg for rescue anymore. They simply assert that someone lived here, that they matter. Kelly feels a quiet rage rise in her chest, not directed at the infected, but at the systems that allowed so many people to be reduced to footnotes. She thinks of Sir Jimmy again, of how he turned survival into spectacle, and realizes that cruelty often hides behind claims of necessity. This city stands as proof of what happens when efficiency replaces compassion. They find shelter in what was once a library, its walls cracked but still standing, its shelves empty or burned. Knowledge has not survived here, but traces of its importance remain. Charred pages cling to corners of rooms, words barely legible, like ghosts of thought. Spike runs his fingers across the spine of a half-burned book and imagines the generations of people who once gathered here seeking understanding. The destruction of this place feels symbolic, not just of physical loss, but of the collapse of shared meaning. When information dies, rumor thrives. When understanding fades, fear takes its place. During the night, Spike hears movement outside, not the frantic, erratic sound of the infected, but measured steps. Someone is nearby. He and Kelly exchange silent signals, readying themselves without panic. A small group emerges, not hostile, but cautious, weapons lowered but present. Their faces show fatigue rather than aggression. These people identify themselves as part of a roaming network that helps survivors escape higher-risk zones like the city they are in. They do not stay in one place long. Their strategy depends on movement, adaptability, and information exchange rather than fixed settlements. Spike listens as their leader explains how they guide survivors through safe corridors, using shifting routes to avoid detection by both infected and hostile human groups. The leader speaks with clarity, not authority. Decisions are made through shared assessment rather than command. This approach reminds Spike of the community they just left, reinforcing the idea that leadership does not require dominance. It requires responsibility, transparency, and the willingness to listen. Kelly, however, remains guarded. Mobility does not guarantee safety. She has seen too many groups claim noble purpose while hiding exploitation beneath it. One of the members, a younger woman with scars across her arms, shares her story. Her testimony reinforces what Spike and Kelly already know. The greatest danger in this world often wears a human face. Systems built on fear become engines of cruelty. Stability achieved through violence is not stability at all, but prolonged collapse disguised as order. The group invites Spike and Kelly to join them, at least temporarily, offering access to safe routes, information, and shared resources. The offer forces a decision. Traveling alone means control, but also isolation. Traveling with others offers protection, but also risk. Spike weighs the benefits carefully. He considers Kelly's need for autonomy, his own desire for connection, and the uncertainty that shadows every alliance. Ultimately, he suggests a short-term partnership, limited by clear boundaries and mutual accountability. The leader accepts without hesitation, emphasizing that trust grows through action, not promises. As they move together, Spike observes how information flows within the group. There are no secrets held by a single authority. Knowledge is shared openly, allowing everyone to assess risk and contribute to decisions. This transparency builds a form of resilience that does not depend on a single leader or ideology. It also prevents manipulation, because power cannot hide in silence when everyone has access to the same facts. Spike recognizes this as another form of resistance, not against the infected, but against the human tendency to centralize control. Kelly remains observant, watching for inconsistencies, testing boundaries subtly. She notices that when mistakes happen, they are acknowledged rather than punished. Accountability replaces blame. This challenges her deeply ingrained expectation of cruelty following error. Under Sir Jimmy, mistakes were spectacles of punishment. Here, they are treated as learning opportunities. This shift does not erase her mistrust, but it softens its edges. It suggests that power does not have to be abusive, and that structure does not automatically equal oppression. Their journey with the group leads them through a series of abandoned neighborhoods that show signs of attempted restoration. Gardens planted in broken yards, solar panels mounted on collapsed rooftops, murals painted over crumbling walls. These efforts did not last, but their existence reveals a pattern of resistance against despair. People tried to rebuild, they did not surrender easily. The world's current state is not the result of apathy, but of overwhelming force. This realization brings a strange comfort. It means humanity did not simply give up. It was outmatched, but not defeated in spirit. One night, as they camp in a subway station turned shelter, Spike and Kelly talk quietly about the future, not in terms of survival plans, but in terms of purpose. Spike wonders what kind of world could emerge if communities like the ones they encountered connected, shared knowledge, and refused to isolate. Kelly wonders whether healing is possible for people like her, whose identities were shaped by violence. Spike tells her that healing does not require forgetting. It requires meaning. It requires choosing what comes next, rather than letting the past dictate every decision. The group leader overhears part of this conversation, and later adds that rebuilding does not start with cities or systems. It starts with people deciding that cruelty is no longer acceptable, even when it seems efficient. This resonates deeply with Spike. Efficiency once justified containment zones, mass abandonment, and silent deaths. Compassion, though slower, preserves something essential. It preserves the idea that every life holds value beyond utility. Without that belief, any rebuilt world will simply replicate the same collapse under a different name. As dawn breaks, the group prepares to split paths. Their routes diverge based on different priorities and information networks. Spike and Kelly choose not to continue with them beyond this point, not because of mistrust, but because their own journey requires independence. They part on respectful terms, exchanging information and offering mutual support if paths cross again. There is no sense of loss, only the quiet understanding that connection does not require permanence to be meaningful. As Spike and Kelly walk away, the city fades behind them, replaced by open land, scarred by fire and time. The horizon feels both empty and full, not because it promises safety, but because it offers possibility. Spike realizes that their journey is no longer driven solely by escape or survival. It is driven by the search for a way of living that does not depend on domination, spectacle, or fear. Kelly realizes that her strength is no longer measured only by endurance, but by her capacity to choose compassion without surrendering herself. They do not know where they are going, only what they are leaving behind. Spike and Kelly move cautiously through the remnants of an abandoned highway overpass, now partially collapsed and overgrown with resilient vegetation. The concrete is cracked, moss-covered, and at points entirely replaced by wildflowers pushing through the gaps. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. A constant reminder that the world is healing itself in ways humans once suppressed. Each step is deliberate, for the terrain is treacherous. Rebar juts like skeletal fingers from the cracked pavement, and hidden holes threaten sudden missteps. The highway itself tells stories of sudden abandonment, rusting vehicles frozen in place, personal belongings scattered, graffiti declaring protests, and hopes from long-past survivors. It is both museum and warning, a testament to the fragile persistence of human ambition against nature's inexorable reclaiming. As they progress, Kelly remarks on the quiet intensity of the wind moving through the concrete structures. It is neither comforting nor threatening, simply present. Spike nods, noting that the ambient sounds of this post-collapse world are laden with unintentional signals, bird calls, distant animal movements, and the trickle of water through shattered drainage systems communicate more than they once did. It is the language of survival, of ecosystemic negotiation. They rely on this sensory awareness to guide their navigation, understanding that noise may attract unwanted attention from infected or other hostile humans. They have learned that adaptation depends as much on observation as on action. Hours into their trek, the pair reaches a small settlement at the edge of a canyon. The canyon walls are jagged and steep, but humans have carved terraces into the rock, creating cultivated patches for food. The ingenuity is striking. Rainwater is channeled through stone channels to irrigate the terraces, and solar panels, scavenged from nearby ruins, power minimal lighting and basic communication devices. The community here calls themselves the Terraced, a group committed to balancing agricultural productivity with environmental sustainability. Each resident has a role, and the rotation of labor ensures no single person becomes overwhelmed or marginalized. Resource management here is careful and deliberate, avoiding both overproduction and scarcity. A lesson learned from observing the collapse's early chaos. Spike and Kelly are welcomed by the community's steward, a woman named Leora, who explains their approach to governance and survival. It is not based on power or hierarchy, but on consensus and transparency. Decisions are made collectively, often after careful debate and scenario modeling. They even involve young members in planning, teaching them not only practical skills, but also critical thinking, foresight, and ethical responsibility. Education is embedded in survival, not separated from it. Spike finds himself impressed by the careful documentation of tasks, shared knowledge, and the systemic thinking underlying every action. The Terraced operate less as a settlement and more as a living organism, each part interdependent yet flexible. While interacting with the Terraced, Spike discovers a library of sorts, a collection of salvaged books, journals, and digital files. The inhabitants emphasize historical memory, understanding that survival is not only about physical sustenance, but also about cultural and intellectual continuity. They have meticulously digitized texts on engineering, medicine, psychology, and ecology, ensuring that knowledge is preserved even if individuals perish. Kelly is particularly drawn to the practical engineering manuals, while Spike lingers over philosophical and ethical texts, reflecting on how human decisions led to both catastrophe and survival. One evening, The pair witnesses a community meeting where a dispute arises over the distribution of limited seeds for the next planting cycle. Rather than defaulting to majority rule or authority-based judgment, the terrorists employ a layered negotiation process. Stakeholders explain their intended uses, potential risks, and mitigation strategies. Collectively, they evaluate options, suggesting compromises and innovations that increase overall capacity. Spike is struck by the way this community transforms potential conflict into a generative process, one that fosters cooperation, learning, and adaptation rather than resentment. After several days, Spike and Kelly prepare to leave. Having absorbed lessons in ecological adaptation, conflict mediation, and systems thinking, Leora provides them with maps indicating other settlements, trade routes, and areas where resources might be scarce or abundant. She emphasizes the importance of communication and network building between communities, recognizing that survival in isolation is possible, but thriving emerges from interconnectedness. They are given small, practical tools and instructions for maintaining them: compasses, water filters, and solar charging kits for minimal electronics, each designed for durability and adaptability. Their departure from the terrace coincides with the first signs of seasonal change. The wind shifts, carrying the scent of distant snow at higher elevations. Animal tracks become more abundant, and migratory patterns are visible in the sky. Spike reflects on the rhythms of this world, how every organism, human or non-human, is part of a delicate balance. The collapse has forced humanity to reconsider not only technology and society, but also the philosophical assumptions underpinning civilization. Kelly and Spike traverse the canyon rim, moving toward a distant plateau known to harbor additional survivor networks. They travel lightly, carrying only essentials, mindful that speed and adaptability are as important as physical strength. Along the way, they encounter scattered remnants of the infected stiffened bodies in early decay, evidence of previous skirmishes, and subtle markers indicating that some communities maintain zones of avoidance to minimize contact. The world remains dangerous, but intelligence and caution increasingly allow humans to navigate it successfully. As the sun sets, casting long shadows over the rugged landscape, the pair pauses to observe the interplay of light and terrain. Shadowed canyons give way to sunlit terraces, indicating microclimates and potential areas for further exploration or settlement. Spike muses on the interconnectedness of observation, knowledge, and decision-making. Survival is no longer merely physical, but requires mental acuity, emotional awareness, and ethical discernment. Night falls, and they camp near a spring emerging from the canyon wall. The water is clear and abundant, a minor luxury that reminds them how much scarcity has shaped the post-collapse experience. Spike and Kelly share stories of previous settlements, comparing techniques, philosophies, and lessons learned. They understand that their journey is as much about gathering knowledge and forming networks as it is about personal survival. Each step expands their capacity to contribute meaningfully to future communities, weaving their experiences into an emergent collective intelligence. Spike and Kelly descend the plateau with measured steps, each carefully placed to avoid loose rocks and hidden cavities. The terrain has shifted from jagged stone to smoother slopes, interspersed with hardy shrubs and sparse groves of twisted pines. The wind carries a chill that seeps through layers of clothing, and both move with the silent awareness of the precarious balance between speed and caution. Below them lies a wide valley, partially shrouded in morning mist, revealing pockets of life that have persisted despite decades of upheaval. Distant clusters of smoke suggest human presence, evidence that not all survivors remain isolated or nomadic. As they reach the valley floor, they notice signs of cultivation, rows of low crops, simple irrigation channels, and makeshift shelters constructed from salvaged materials. Kelly whispers about the ingenuity of these settlers, noting the careful integration of natural features into their designs. Spike agrees, observing that even amid chaos, humans find ways to organize, innovate, and coexist with the environment. The valley represents a fragile but functioning ecosystem of human ingenuity, where every effort is purposeful and every action has consequences. Observing from the ridge, they strategize a descent that balances stealth with visibility, ensuring they avoid inadvertent confrontation while making contact with potential allies. During the descent, they are confronted by a small patrol of humans, armed but wary. Spike instinctively raises his hands in a non-threatening manner, while Kelly steps forward, her voice calm and measured as she communicates their peaceful intent. The patrol, after a tense evaluation, allows them passage, demonstrating that trust can be negotiated even in a post-apocalyptic context. This encounter underscores the ongoing tension between caution and the need for collaboration, highlighting the delicate social contracts that have emerged in the absence of formal governance. It is a microcosm of survival strategies that combine psychological acuity with ethical discernment, revealing how interpersonal dynamics are critical in shaping outcomes. As they move deeper into the valley, Spike notices faint tracks leading toward a larger settlement nestled near a river bend. The settlement is shielded by natural barriers and strategically placed watchposts. Kelly comments on the intentional placement of these structures, deducing that the inhabitants possess both tactical awareness and ecological literacy. Approaching carefully, they are met by a gatekeeper who conducts a methodical inquiry, assessing intentions, identity, and knowledge of external threats. Spike and Kelly respond with detailed accounts of prior settlements, interactions with infected, and adaptive strategies, demonstrating credibility and value. Their preparation and experience earn them cautious acceptance into the community. Inside the settlement, they are introduced to a council responsible for resource allocation, security, and cultural continuity. Spike observes a system of governance that is participatory and evidence-based, balancing practical needs with ethical considerations. Decisions are informed by both historical precedent and predictive modeling, reflecting a synthesis of empirical observation and strategic foresight. Kelly explores communal work areas, noting methods of energy generation, food preservation, and conflict mediation that reflect a sophisticated understanding of resource management. Spike engages with young members, sharing knowledge and encouraging critical thinking about ecological resilience, personal responsibility, and the importance of maintaining communal memory. Over several days, Spike and Kelly participate in collaborative projects, from fortifying shelters to constructing rainwater collection systems. The work is physically demanding but intellectually engaging, reinforcing the connection between action, consequence, and learning. Observing the community's rituals and routines, they note the balance between labor, recreation, and reflection, a deliberate structuring that maintains psychological well-being alongside survival. Nights are spent around controlled fires, where storytelling, debate, and strategic planning reinforce social bonds and transfer knowledge. These gatherings provide continuity, cultural identity, and a framework for transmitting survival skills across generations. One evening, as they patrolled the perimeter, Spike and Kelly encounter subtle signs of infected movement near the outskirts of the valley. They alert the council, prompting a coordinated response that involves temporary barriers, careful monitoring, and controlled distractions to redirect potential threats. The operation is executed with precision, demonstrating the community's capacity for adaptive problem-solving and strategic foresight. Spike reflects on the evolution from individual survival instincts to collective action, understanding that effective coordination amplifies resilience and mitigates risk in ways isolated efforts cannot. In the following days, Spike and Kelly contribute to community mapping projects, documenting safe passages, natural hazards, and potential resource sites. This intelligence gathering is critical for sustaining the settlement and facilitating future alliances with other groups. The effort highlights the interplay between observation, planning, and action, reinforcing the notion that survival in this post-collapse world is both spatial and social. Knowledge, trust, and ethical engagement are as essential as physical strength, and every decision carries weight for the community's long-term viability. As winter approaches, preparations intensify. Spike and Kelly assist in stockpiling provisions, repairing structures, and reinforcing energy sources. Seasonal changes impose constraints and opportunities, necessitating flexibility, foresight, and collaboration. They witness the community's integration of ecological patterns into planning, such as anticipating river swell, monitoring animal migration, and adjusting crop rotation schedules. The sophistication of these adaptive strategies reflects a deep understanding of natural rhythms, demonstrating that survival is enhanced by aligning human activity with environmental dynamics rather than attempting to dominate or control them. Toward the story's close, Spike and Kelly stand at a high vantage point overlooking the valley. The settlement thrives despite the remnants of chaos, a testament to human ingenuity, cooperation, and ethical foresight. They reflect on the journey, recognizing the transformation from reactive survival to proactive stewardship. They have navigated danger, cultivated relationships, and contributed to a community capable of self-sustaining resilience. The landscape, once a scene of devastation, now embodies potential, adaptation, and hope. With the distant horizon illuminated by sunrise, they understand that survival is not simply an end, but a continuous process of learning, adaptation, and ethical engagement with the world and its inhabitants. The air in the valley carried a strange stillness as Spike and Kelly prepared for their departure, aware that the world beyond the settlement remained unpredictable and dangerous. Despite the relative safety they had found, the wilderness surrounding the valley was untamed, and they could not rely on the security of walls, watch posts, or the goodwill of those who had built their fragile society here. The lessons learned over their journey, trust, tempered by caution, strength balanced with strategy, and observation paired with ethical action, were now their most valuable tools. They moved with deliberate care, studying the terrain, reading subtle shifts in wind and sound, and scanning for signs of the infected that might threaten them. Every step required mindfulness, every choice demanded attention, and every moment carried weight in a world where miscalculation could be fatal. Before leaving, they were granted a moment of reflection with the council and community members. The elders, who had witnessed decades of transformation and collapse, offered guidance, not just in survival, but in understanding the delicate web of human relationships and environmental dependencies that sustained life. Spike and Kelly shared knowledge of alternative survival strategies they had developed on the road, methods for tracking movement patterns, identifying edible flora, and improvising protective structures from natural materials. These contributions, though modest compared to the community's accumulated experience, were received with gratitude and sparked discussions about expanding exploration and intelligence gathering to other regions. As they departed, the valley receded behind them, a patchwork of cultivated land, reinforced shelters, and small forests, a symbol of resilience and adaptability. Their journey took them through uneven terrain, shifting from lush valleys to narrow passes and rocky outcrops. Along the way, they encountered pockets of displaced survivors, many wary and hesitant, drawing upon lessons of negotiation, observation, and ethical engagement. Spike and Kelly approached these groups cautiously, offering guidance and practical support without imposing authority. They became both emissaries and learners, exchanging knowledge while assessing vulnerabilities and strengths in each new encounter. Through these interactions, they developed a nuanced understanding of human behavior under prolonged stress, discovering patterns of alliance, competition, and cooperation that mirrored ecological dynamics in the natural world. They navigated by stars, improvised compasses, and their own intuition, balancing careful mapping with adaptive improvisation. Their interactions with the terrain were meticulous, crossing fragile bridges of ice, using the subtle bend of reeds to detect soft soil and hidden pits, and noting the echoes of distant mountains to gauge spatial awareness. Every action was calculated to preserve energy, reduce exposure, and maintain readiness for sudden threats, reflecting a synthesis of physical endurance, environmental literacy, and situational awareness honed over months of movement through a world reshaped by devastation. The turning point came when they reached the edge of a ruined urban area, half swallowed by vegetation and partially reconstructed by survivors. This cityscape was a microcosm of the world's transformation, crumbling infrastructure repurposed for shelter, overgrown streets acting as both barriers and highways, and communities adapting to new forms of governance. Spike and Kelly moved cautiously through its ruins, observing interactions among human groups, noting emergent hierarchies, and assessing signs of cooperative versus predatory behavior. The lessons learned in the valley: trust with verification, collaboration without subordination, ethical action with strategic foresight, proved essential in navigating this complex human ecosystem. They discovered a small enclave of survivors, led by a former teacher who had organized educational and governance structures to maintain knowledge and social cohesion. Spike and Kelly shared experiences from their travels, offering insights into adaptive strategies for defense, resource allocation, and long-term sustainability. They learned in turn about innovations in crop cultivation, water purification, and communication systems that leveraged both technology scavenged from the old world and organic solutions adapted to post-apocalyptic realities. As they prepared to leave the city behind, Spike and Kelly paused to survey the horizon. The sun was dipping below fractured skyline silhouettes, casting long shadows that reminded them of the constant interplay between danger and opportunity. Every structure, every tree, and every movement in the distance carried significance. Their journey had transformed them from reactive survivors into proactive navigators of a complex, interconnected world. They understood that adaptation was continuous, that learning never ceased, and that the survival of individuals depended inherently on the resilience and ethics of the communities they engaged with. In the final moments, they reached a vantage point overlooking an expansive landscape stretching beyond the city and valley. Here, remnants of past devastation lay intermixed with signs of renewal. Rivers had shifted, Forests were reclaiming abandoned areas, and pockets of human settlements dotted the terrain. Spike and Kelly reflected on the full arc of their journey from isolated flight and confrontation with immediate dangers, to participation in collective strategies of survival and governance, to engagement with emergent societies that balanced human ingenuity with ecological awareness. They realized that humanity's resilience depended not merely on adaptation to environmental hazards, but on the cultivation of trust, knowledge, and ethical responsibility toward both people and the world around them. With a deep, steadying breath, they moved forward, continuing their journey with renewed purpose. They had witnessed the depths of violence, the heights of ingenuity, and the persistent capacity for both destruction and renewal within human communities. Each step carried lessons learned, each glance carried vigilance, and each decision carried the weight of accumulated experience. In the quiet that followed, the valley, the city, and the remnants of chaos receded into memory, leaving Spike and Kelly to face the vast, open world with awareness, resilience, and hope. Their journey, while far from over, had crystallized the principles of survival, cooperation, and ethical engagement, preparing them to meet whatever challenges awaited in the evolving landscape of a post-apocalyptic world.